Well, hello, everybody. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We start the meeting with an invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Rouse.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willett.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. We are going to hear just a point of order. When we get to public hearings, I'm going to pick up the surplus of property, so number 3 and number 4 first, and then we will move into the first item, which is an appeal. You don't need a motion because it's already on the agenda. I'm just going to move the orders around. And with that, I will take a motion for minutes.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the regular evening minutes from January 7th, 2025.
Second. We have a motion and a second, clerk?
Rouse.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willett.
Yes.
Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll move into special business. We have the appointment of Bill Roscoe to the Boise City Ada County Housing Authority.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent of the appointment of Reverend Bill Roscoe to the board of the Boise City Ada County Housing Authority for a 5-year term ending October 31st, 2029.
Without objection. All right, thank you. I just want to say a couple things. Appreciate the request for unanimous consent. I'd first like to thank, and I've talked with Reverend Roscoe about this, Katie Villa, who's an outgoing member of the Housing Authority. She provided wonderful service, was deeply passionate about the issue, and shared her expertise in housing with the Housing Authority. And though Katie had hoped to continue in this role, the county has instead put forward Reverend Roscoe. And I met with Reverend Roscoe just before Christmas and appreciated the conversation and the work that he does with all of us and the city to advance our goals of providing homes for everyone in the community and supporting those who need it most. He is I particularly appreciate that he shares these goals with us, and that he is looking forward to working alongside the city and the agency to ensure that the goals that we have can be met when it comes to housing folks, providing the services that folks need for self-sufficiency while continuing his great work in his day job at the Boise Rescue Mission. So appreciate his willingness to serve and for all of you for putting him on the committee. We're going to move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just item numbers 11 and 12, and there's actually probably a couple more on there. This is just sort of a continuation of the conversation we had during our work session today about some of the success the city has had in acquiring a lot of different grant funding to really make a lot of incredible programs happen. One of them that I'm very partial to is to our Youth Climate Action Fund. And this $100,000 is actually to help with the micro grants that are student-led. And if you haven't caught wind of those projects, there are students from all over the valley who are coming up with great ideas, partnering with nonprofits to advance climate action goals. And the ability to get these grants and to create these programs really is incredible. And it does take a lot of work from our staff to work with the youth to execute them. So again, a big thank you to our staff who's been working on all of these grants to make these programs possible.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a comment about item number 4, approval of a mini grant awarding $4,700 in national alcohol beverage control funds to our city for the development, enhancement, or expansion of effective alcohol education. And this has been something that has been kind of interesting to watch in my district. Before this year, the 2 years prior, we saw some pretty big increases in liquor law violations kind of surrounding Boise State campus. And this year's report, we saw a dramatic drop. So prior to this year, it was 100 violations increase the 2 years prior. It went down by 150 in the 2023 report. And a lot of that is efforts that Officer Cameron Colos has participated in trying to reactivate the alcohol compliance program. And we're seeing a lot of those fruits now. This is an extension of that, being able to help continue some of those efforts and increase those things. I just want to publicly thank him and the rest of the team at BPD for the efforts that they're putting into creating a safer neighborhood for our students and residents. And we're seeing those impacts. So just want to thank them publicly.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to point out item number 14. This is an incredible opportunity to basically cut red tape for our small businesses, in particular our childcare centers. It allows us to basically use one check and one background check instead of having to have multiple government agencies go through it. And I'm really glad to see that we're doing that. It's really important that we get more childcare in the city of Boise, and anything that we can do to make things more efficient on our side is a good thing.
All right, thanks everybody. I too wanted to thank staff, but then also congratulate staff for the new award of $100,000 for the Youth Climate Action Fund. About 2 years ago, we had the opportunity. We were invited to apply for this for the first $50,000 grant, and we set out to do that. We won the award in April, so it'll be a year and a half, and then put the news out to residents to see what we get. And the number of students that were interested in forming teams of people, creating projects and proposing them to us was really inspiring. In fact, some of us just recently before Christmas joined the students at the library and heard updates and learned more about the process they'd gone through and creating these programs. And so this is a great opportunity for us to do it again. And we were invited to apply because of the interest, the implementation that students delivered on, and then the great team here at the city that worked to support those students and worked with the foundation and to demonstrate the impact. And so really excited to be able to continue this and to be able to announce to young people in the community again that there's an opportunity for them to propose projects to us that can be funded. And then I want to thank another item tonight, the Treasure Valley Canopy Network, for their continued partnership with us to support the Elaine Clegg City of Trees Challenge. We are increasing the level of engagement we have with them because they continue to take more responsibility and to help us meet our tree planting goals, as well as to help our tree folks focus on other parts of the city as well. So it's been a great long-term partnership. They too have received quite a bit of grant funding the last couple of years through their collaborations with us and other cities in the region, and look forward to meeting the goals we have for planting trees to cool our neighborhoods down, and the continued partnership with the Treasure Valley Canopy Network. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Rouse,
Yes.
Knapp,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willard,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And now we'll move on to ordinances. There are 3 on first reading.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Second. Oh, unanimous. Sorry.
Without objection.
Madam Mayor, if I could just make one note on this before they're read. Ordinance 425, item number 3. Just note a typo on line 4, slinements. That'll be corrected on the second reading.
ORD -2-25, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 1, Article A, Building Code, updating accessibility requirements to align with the state, allowing for an additional extension period, updating non-compliance provisions, and providing an effective date. ORD -3-25, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 1, Article B, 1 and 2 Family Dwelling Building Code, to create alignment with state code, creating an additional extension and amendment compliance provisions, and providing an effective date. ORD -4-25, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 9, Energy Conservation Code, creation exemptions for certain accessory buildings, create further alignments with state code, allowing for certain visual inspections, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
And now one on second.
Just a moment. Madam Mayor, I'm gonna make a motion here on this
Oh,
one,
okay, sure.
to return this one to staff. I will, it'll be pretty self-explanatory in my motion, and then I'll explain it. I move that Boise City Council return the ordinance to staff, ordinance -34-24 to staff with the following amendments, and direct that it be returned to us for consideration on January 28th, 2025, to be noticed on the first, second, and third reading calendars at that time. First amendment, that Cecil D. Andrus Park be excluded from the list of parks that may allow special event liquor sales. That the ordinance include a sunset provision effective February 1st, 2026. That all special events applicants attest in writing that they and their alcohol vendors agree to adhere to Idaho Code sections 23-100 or 1033, 23-607, and 23-931, which prohibit liquor advertising and aid from alcohol manufacturers to retailers. Additionally, I direct staff to evaluate demand for dedicated special event officers and alcohol compliance officers, and would expect that staff report back, preferably the police chief, in his budget hearing on what demand and need is for both those types of officers. So if I could, do I have a second?
Second.
And if I could just speak to my motion, this came up late last year, this ordinance that had been proposed. There is some demand among special event hosts to serve liquor in parks. This is kind of an extension of existing venues. Like, I think maybe a place with a liquor license, say on a place like 8th Street, where we allow liquor sales near one of those vendors in public spaces, but have not allowed that in parks. I have mixed feelings about this, and I think council does as well. And I'd like to try this on a trial basis, which is why we've included the sunset for February 1st, 2026. I'd like to, some of our larger events, until we kind of figure this out, I'd like to avoid events around the Capitol that serve liquor. So that's why we've included the exclusion for Cecil D. Andrus Park. And then just acknowledging that the state sets liquor law, but Boise Police Department enforces liquor law. So we just want special event license holders to recognize that there are different rules around advertising and aid that you might receive from a liquor manufacturer as opposed to a beer or wine manufacturer. So we just want our folks to be on notice about that so that we can maintain good relationships between these special event applicants and those who are entrusted to enforce our liquor laws. Additionally, in the conversation around this, we've realized that we put our special events folks through a whole lot to get approval. I think there's some opportunities, both in conversations with council members and the mayor, to look at what we're doing, see if there's ways we can do that better to make that easier on special events that we really like here. So council is committed to doing that. Additionally, the city might have broader needs around police force that's dedicated to special events, especially when special events we have multiple on the same weekend. It puts a lot of overtime demand on our officers, and we want to try to alleviate that. So we'd like to evaluate both that and the need for any further alcohol compliance resources. I think right now we have pretty limited resources when it comes to alcohol compliance. We do have dedicated officers committed to that, but we want to better understand how we can meet this demand in the community, but also keep folks safe and keep them enjoying their beverages responsibly. So,
Madam Mayor, question for the motion maker.
Sure.
So the provision for a sunset in February of 2026 is to use this as a trial period to see if we're going to continue. what I think, which I'm fine with, I think that we need to make sure that staff has direction that we need a solution before February. And so although it's going to sunset on that day, what I don't want to have happen is I don't want to have this conversation begin on February, in February at that meeting. And so I guess my hope and I guess my request from staff is that we would have this discussion before we got to February and that we would have it solved before the end of the year in 2025. So while this is a trial period with an intention to end on that sunset date, that we actually make a decision on whether or not we're going to be moving forward before 2026, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would just recognize that we have an election between now and then for half of council, so there is that consideration. But I think a similar time frame of bringing this up again in late November, early December for consideration around the same time as now, I think would be appropriate. I think what I would need to see to be willing to support this long term is that I want to know what it looks like from the perspective of law enforcement at that time, if it's changing the nature of events or if it's people just being able to enjoy themselves in a different way and we don't really notice a change. So I would probably need to see those things if I'm voting on this again in a year in order to support it long term. But yeah, I think what you said, Councilmember Halliburton, makes sense.
Madam Mayor, I have a question for the motion maker. Will this come back for a first, second, and third reading at one time?
Yeah. Councilmember Halliburton had requested when we originally voted to hold this that we consider it first, second, and third on this date. I was initially planning on doing that last week. However, when we voted to hold it, it did not get noticed as being held each week, so we couldn't take any action on it last week. So originally we were planning on doing it first, second, third today. We were unable to do that, and we don't meet next week, so we'd be doing first, second, and third at that time. This has been out in the public for over a month, so I'm comfortable with the amount of notice that it's had. I wish it had been on the agenda, and I would ask staff that if there's a way for us to hold ordinances on a reading calendar for a time certain for those to be noticed over again, that would be helpful. Just a note for staff. I know there's some challenges with the software though.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate Council President bringing this before us. I think, this, I haven't truly felt comfortable with this ordinance and unlikely to probably support it when it comes back before us, but I am happy to vote in favor of this motion to bring it back. I appreciate trying to get it to a workable position. I think the concerns I have are similar to what were mentioned in that, we have these park facilities that residents will use before, during, or after events. And these events might be rocking. It might be a little different atmosphere than normal, but special events are important in our park system. But yeah, introducing liquor, it does increase the chance of overconsumption of alcohol, potentially leading to disruptive behavior, damage, or conflicts, which can undermine those community expectations, I think, for our parks. And so I will be supporting the motion to bring it back as amended, but unlikely to support in the end.
Madam Mayor, I will just add, I support the motion. Special events in our community add a tremendous amount of economic influence and character to our community. I think they're vitally important for building community. And I think we need to be competitive with not only other areas in our city, but also with other communities in our state. And I think that the margins are really slim on these events. If there's something that we could do to help offset those costs in a responsible way and give them a different revenue stream, then I'm in support of that. And I want to assure folks that our special events go through a very rigorous vetting process, permitting process. This is not a guarantee for somebody holding a special event, special events also are only for over 1,000 attendees. But it's not guaranteed. It's not for every event. It has to be an event that has, that's proving that they can manage this responsibility well. So I look forward to hearing back again, and maybe even I think that the review from police would be really helpful the next time that we look at this. And our special event season, I think, largely wraps up after September. So it could probably be done reasonably anytime thereafter. But looking forward to hopefully hearing that it hasn't had negative impacts on our community in any notable way. And so I appreciate the motion and a bit of a compromise that this has come to so that we can give this a shot.
Madam Mayor, I appreciate the council president bringing this forward and looking for a compromise. I know that many times we've had some mixed feelings on this ordinance. I think special events are so valuable here in Boise. We have some terrific events have gone year on year, and they provide a lot of value. They provide a lot of space for community engagement. And however, when we see these in the parks, I'm a little concerned. I can't support this ordinance tonight for the sale of liquor at our events and public parks. I respect the intent of the proposal, but I'm deeply concerned about its potential impact on the health and well-being of our residents and the long-term accessibility of parks and spaces for all our members of the community. In addition to that, recent findings from the U.S. Surgeon General have just highlighted the very serious risk associated with alcohol consumption, including its link to increased cancer risk. I think introducing liquor sales, even on a temporary basis, we've had a longstanding tradition of not allowing liquor. We do have wine and beer, and there's a whole plethora of cocktails now that have been developed. Introducing liquor sales in the public spaces meant to foster recreation, relaxation, and community engagement really undermines our commitment to promoting a healthy environment for families and individuals. So I will not be voting for this tonight.
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I'm happy to support the motion tonight, and I'm happy to support it when it comes to first, second, and third reading when it comes up on our calendar agenda next. I also would have been happy to have seen it move forward as is, but I think that there's times when it's better to compromise and to try to make sure that we're getting things right. And I appreciate the council president's efforts in trying to figure that out. I think a trial period makes sense. I do kind of question not including Cecil DeAndres Park, just because I think different rules in different parks is always a little bit tough. But again, I think that's really important that we figure out a way to see how this can work, and we can make those changes as needed. I guess one thing I want to make sure that I say is that I've got a lot of faith in our event organizers to do things well. And I think that our special events committee at the city, which comprises several different organizations, including ACHD, the police department, the Central District Health, they make our organizers go through a really intense process to make sure that they get these events right. And then, if approved, it becomes that event's organizer's responsibility to pull that event off safely and correctly. And if they are not doing a good job, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, it doesn't matter if they're serving hard alcohol, if they're serving wine, if they're serving beer, if they are following the rules, and if they have good alcohol compliance teams, and they make sure that their bartenders are tips trained and doing all the things that we require them, I don't think that there's a difference. And I think that they are good players and they should be able to continue to move forward. And I think that if people mess up, they need to be held responsible. When we have special event planners who come through and they promise to do all these things and they don't fulfill those promises, they should not be allowed to have those events again and again and again, and they should lose some of those restrictions. I don't know that it's our job to make sure that people behave when they have events, but I think it's our job to make sure that event organizers are following the rules. And so I don't have an issue with this moving forward the way that it is. Again, I think that compromise is good. I think that this makes sense. I think this allows us to evaluate things over a period of time. But I think that if people are going to abuse alcohol, they're going to abuse all types of alcohol. And it's on our event organizers to make sure that they're creating a safe environment and a monitored environment that has all the same regulations that all our businesses do inside their private property.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
First of all, thank you to the council president for coming up with, I think, is a better ordinance than the one that's before us. I have a couple comments in general. I think it's very ironic that we're having this conversation when we just approved a grant for alcohol awareness. And now we're talking about allowing hard liquor in our parks. I want to keep Boise family friendly. That's why people move here. It's an important part of our community. Also, our events are important. I mean, special events are what keeps a community unique. If we had this to do over again, I think we should have had a different conversation. I think this process has been bungled. If the discussion was, how do we make sure that we have our special events be competitive, then that should have been the conversation versus how do we just allow hard alcohol sales? And I wish we could have had that conversation because we need to keep special events. I also am concerned that we've not heard directly from law enforcement from the dais. I think that's a missed opportunity, and I wish we could have had a public hearing on it. I think that would have been a much better opportunity for us to educate the public on what it takes to do a special event and to really get more public input. So I'm going to be voting no against the substitute motion and intend to vote no when it comes back.
All right, I've got just a couple questions before I call the vote. Thanks everybody for your comments. I trust that staff was able to catch the amendments. I wrote them down, but I'm sure somebody else did. The clarity that I hope for on staff's behalf is the evaluation of dedicated event staff and alcohol compliance staff officers. I shouldn't say staff officers. Are you expecting that in 2 weeks? Or is that part of the budget bill process or the review after a potential pilot, if this were to pass, to then take the data and have the chief come back with that? Like, just want to make sure timing wise that we're clear on what you're looking for so that we can meet those needs.
My expectation would be that Boise Police will have done that analysis prior to their budget presentation, and they consider those requests in the context of other officer needs that they have at the department.
Okay.
But understanding that council has identified that there may be needs both in alcohol compliance and in special event for more officers.
All right. And then, of course, not written into the ordinance language, but I'm going to this. The sunset will, of course, be written in on 2/1/26. But the review that would be concluded at the end of the event season, we could probably talk more, but just so the chief starts to understand, you are expecting kind of a review based on data tied to the events in Boise City. So there's city and event specific data that we can review from the current event that took place with or without cocktail sales, and similar timing and calls for service, et cetera, from events prior to that without, so for a comparison.
Precisely.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think we've got the clarity that we need. I'm getting a nod from the chief. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Morales,
Yes.
Nath,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willis,
No.
Corliss,
No.
Halliburton,
Yes.
4 in favor, 2 opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. So now we are moving into public hearings, and we're going to pick up the 2 surplus property items first. Maureen, it's been a while since we've had you in chambers. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, and Council. Let me just pull up my presentation quickly. Mayor, Council, it has been a while. Thanks for having me back. Maureen Brewer, Housing and Community Development Senior Manager, here to briefly present to you 2 properties that HCD is requesting authorization to surplus. Both of these properties are single family.
Just for point of order. So, you said both properties. Are you presenting on both Poppy Street and Woody Street at the same time?
Mayor, that's right.
Okay,
2
and then
different resolutions, but same presentation.
we'll combine the hearings. Nobody's signed up to testify on this, but just for clarity,
Great,
Both
thank you.
items we're discussing now, these two that you can see, I could have looked up and then seen that. Sorry for the question.
Oh, that's okay.
Um,
No,
And then we'll check online and in here to see if anybody wants to testify on one or both and then move forward with separate resolutions. Thanks,
Mayor,
Maureen.
thanks for the clarification. That's perfect. So two properties, one at 2709 North Woody, one at 9679 West Poppy. These are both single family homes. Both Poppy and Woody need significant renovation. The renovation costs right now at Woody are estimated to be in excess of $43,000, and Poppy is estimated to be in excess of $51,000. And I'll give you a moment to sort of absorb this slide, if you will, but the take home here is that the cost to maintain these homes and sustain affordability is high. So essentially, the cost to maintain them is not supported by the rents that we are able to charge. The surplus process, of course, has certain requirements. They've laid out what that process looks like here for you. Again, take home here is that among the requirements is that the properties are both underutilized and not being used for a public purpose. So the steps then that we have taken to date, one of the properties, Poppy, my team conducted a change of use public hearing per CDBG regulations on November 18th, brought the resolution to surplus and request tonight's public hearing last month in December, here tonight for the authorization to surplus via this public hearing. Assuming we have that authorization after this evening, we will list those properties for sale as is tomorrow and sell them to the highest bidder. Offers will be accepted through 5 p.m. on January 31st of this year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay. Maureen, great to see you. Thank you so much. Couple questions. How many of these kind of single family homes does the city own and rent?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willits, excuse me, we own about 20 or so single family homes. I can get you the exact number. All of them are in this position where in which the rents we can charge do not cover the expenses. So you might recall last year we adjusted our rent policy to overcome some of this issue. And then as these properties, the single family homes in particular, age out of their period of affordability, those homes that we can rehab within reason, we're trying to sell those as affordable home ownership opportunities. And those that require too much renovation beyond which we have the budget for, we're selling as is.
Follow up. Maureen, can you give us a little history on when these properties were bought? Why?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willett. So the Poppy property was bought in 2013. I don't think in my notes I have when the Woody property was bought, but it's been in our portfolio for at least that amount of time. The line of thinking at the time, certainly well intended and worked for a while, was to provide and expand an affordable rental housing opportunity. The market has shifted such that we have had a demonstrated trend of not being able to charge the rents that we need to keep up with the expense. So it's really just a kind of shift, if you will, in how we approach the rental housing portfolio that HCD owns and manages, and making sure that we're doing so in a cost-effective way and that rents are able to pay for the expenses associated with the portfolio. Does that help?
Madam Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
Maureen, this is probably outside the scope of this hearing, so hopefully the mayor's not listening. What are we going to do with this money? I just want to make sure this isn't like a pivot away from delivering affordable housing opportunities.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Nash. So for Poppy, because we acquired it with CDBG, that money will come back into the CDBG program as program income, and then it will go back out for a CDBG eligible expense. For Woody, those revenues from the sale are going to go back into Fund 543, which is our property management fund, to help stand up the budget within Fund 543 and continue to support the rental housing portfolio we currently own and operate.
All right, this is a public hearing, so is anybody here to testify on this item? Anybody online? Any further questions for Maureen? I'll go ahead and close the hearings, and are this would be the resolutions like consent, so we could actually we should probably take two motions. Yeah, we'll take two motions.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES 27-25, a resolution to surplus property located at 9679 West Poppy Street.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willis,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES 28-25, a resolution to surplus property located at 2709 North Woody Drive.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willis,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll move into the hearings that you're probably all here for. First, we have on number one is the appeal of CVA A2425. Jesse Lyle is joining us from the city. Welcome. We have Ton. I saw Ton in the audience. Great. Ton, are you presenting for the applicant? Applicant. Oh, I always get confused on this one. Applicant, appellant. Probably going to need Rob's guidance a little bit. Neighborhood Association, South Cole. I don't see SD. Is someone else here? Is someone from South Cole online? All right. We didn't expect them. There are no parties of record. So that means that given that this is an appeal, all of you are here for another item, I imagine. So we'll hear from the city, then the applicant, the appellant, take some questions and go from there.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The item before you today is the appeal of CBA 2425. This is the Planning and Zoning Commission's denial of a variance request to deviate from the general site and building design form standards for an approximately 10-acre parcel in the I-1 AIO zone. On November 4th, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard a request for a CUP for an office use to exceed 25% of the gross floor area of a primary structure in industrial zone, as well as a variance to place parking in front of the street-facing facade. The parcel is 10 acres, undeveloped and regularly shaped, with no existing easements or on-site constraints. The proposed building is approximately 40,000 square feet, and the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the CUP request as it met the requirements of the development code. The modern zoning code includes design standards to support active, safe, and inviting pedestrian realms, which include requiring detached sidewalks, enhanced landscaping, placing pedestrian entrances toward the street, and placing parking behind the building facade. The specific code section of the variance request is shown on the screen. While the proposal is located in an industrial zoning district, there are many allowed and conditional uses that support creating an active pedestrian environment, such as a potential brew pub, tavern or lounge, medical or dental clinic, office, any personal services, or other accessory uses. Additionally, the approval of the CUP to allow almost 50% of the building to contain office spaces increases the number of employees on site and supports the need to protect and enhance the pedestrian realm of the project. The applicant contended the proposed use and layout as a corner lot should be considered a hardship and suggested the frontage of Innovator Road should have the required pedestrian streetscape. However, the proposed north-south roadway should not be held to those same standards, which requires parking at or behind the building facade. The findings for variance are shown on your screen and as outlined in the project report and supported by the minutes from the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. The commission found the variance request to waive the site and building design form standards does not meet the requirements, namely because the parcel is large, undeveloped, and regularly shaped with no topographical challenges. The commission acknowledged
that designing industrial sites is complex, however, found that there were alternative designs rather than the one proposed that could meet the development code. Additionally, the variance would conflict with the public interest and comprehensive plan, which has many goals around creating an inviting pedestrian environment. Granting the variance would also provide a special privilege to the property, as these streetscape requirements apply to all developments in the mixed use and industrial zones, as well as the parking requirements. Finally, granting the variance will create negative public health and safety impacts, as streetscape standards increase pedestrian and bicyclist safety by creating a physical separation between vehicles and pedestrians to minimize conflicts. On November 14th, 2024, the applicant appealed the Planning and Zoning Commission's denial of the variance based on the two grounds shown on the screen and discussed in your packet. Generally, the applicant contends that the use requires separate employee parking from truck circulation, and that the corner lot is a hardship of the site itself and not found on industrial sites that only have one street frontage. The applicant further states that the commission failed to apply the code appropriately to reflect the nuance of the proposal, and that strict interpretation of the development code results in an unfair and unreasonable precedent, especially since two commissioners acknowledge that warehouse applications have certain site needs. At the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, the planning team presented one alternative configuration that would meet the requirements of the development code. This was merely one design that could meet code requirements, and the planning team is not suggesting that passenger vehicles and trucks have to commingle. Because this parcel is a blank slate, there are design options available that would locate parking behind the front facade of the structure and still allow for flexibility for future expansion while providing separation between trucks and passenger vehicles. As commission members stated, this is a flat 10-acre undeveloped parcel, and there are ways to design the site to meet code requirements, with other potential layouts shown on your screen. Again, these are not the only options available. I'm not a designer, and these options are merely to demonstrate alternative layouts. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of the applicant to design a project that meets the requirements of the development code, and the responsibility of the planning team to evaluate a proposed design, give feedback, and provide a recommendation. The applicant's assertion that the hardship of the site is that it's a corner lot being used for industrial purposes is not unique to the subject property or to others within the same zoning district. The proposed use is not a characteristic of the site that should be considered when determining a hardship. Additionally, there are many corner lots throughout the city and within industrial zoning districts, making this a common lot layout that has different design needs. While the applicant's memo contends that the commission interpreted the code incorrectly, the code section shown on the screen is very clear. All new development outside of open land in certain residential zones require parking to be located adjacent to or behind the building facade. As such, granting of the variance will provide a special right or privilege of the subject property that's not available to other properties within the same zone. Allowing the variance based on the use rather than the variance criteria will set an unfair precedent, and rather than applying the code equally to all applicants, and the discussion at Planning and Zoning Commission hearing reflects this sentiment. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning team or commission denied the variance request because it did not meet the findings for a hardship. They found that granting the variance was against the public interest and conflicts with many pedestrian scale design goals of the comprehensive plan, and would provide a special right or privilege to the property not given to others within that zone. Tonight, we are looking for the council to uphold or reverse the decision on the variance request. And as a reminder, the grounds where council can find error with the commission's decision are on your screen. And as a note, there are no parties of record for this item. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Madam Mayor, in the Planning and Zoning Commission, there was some conversation at the end about city council needing to fix this. And I think what they were referring to was that there was something broken in our code that didn't address warehouse needs and industrial zones and parking. And I'm wondering if you can just comment a little bit about, does our zoning code does it predict warehouse needs, parking? Are there areas where we identify direction, or is it an oversight that doesn't exist?
Madam Mayor, council members, so there was quite a lot of discussion about parking location and if it was necessary to have different allowances for warehouse and industrial uses. I think that some commission members thought that there could be design options that would meet the code and take care of the concerns that the applicant
mentioned, such as, separating passenger vehicle and warehouse trucks. However, other members of the commission thought that there may be a need for adjustment with the code. So they encouraged council to take that item up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask maybe just slightly differently. Does our code in industrial areas anticipate warehouse use and account for warehouse use as far as design standards go?
Madam Mayor, council members, I think our code talks about and very much, emphasizes pedestrian scale design regardless of the zone. In the I-1 zone and other industrial zones, there are uses that are more pedestrian scale that are allowed. And so I think that the code was designed with that in mind. And, not every warehouse or every lot or project will need multiple areas for parking. I think it kind of just depends on the site and the use and the design.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And Madam Mayor, if I could just one more. I don't know if I've seen any, but I might be forgetting. I'm guessing that we've had industrial projects go through with our new modern zoning code, that this isn't the first industrial development that we have. Have we had other industrial developments since we've implemented the modern zoning code?
Madam Mayor, council members, if the use is allowed, it goes straight to design review. I think this is one of the first that we've had a conditional use permit and a variance associated with that. So in that, this application is unique. But there have been other industrial applications that have gone through design review without these other considerations.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We will hear from the applicant now.
Madam Mayor, distinguished and esteemed council members, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be here to present. And thank you for what you do and for making this possible for the community. I hope to be very brief tonight. My name is Ton Peterson. I'm the Chief Development Officer and General Counsel at Alquist Development. Address is 1144 South Silverstone Way, Suite 500 in Meridian, Idaho, 83642. I will be the first of many. We could be viewed as it were as trailblazers. There is to address, and I will more specifically to address Councilmember Halliburton's comment. There is I think an unintended blind spot in the otherwise very, very well thought out code that was the result of a Herculean effort by the city that should be applauded. And with something that big and something that complex, there are always, unintended gaps. And I think other industrial developers, including Adler Industrial, who's the Valley's largest industrial developer, are quite concerned about this, I think, unintended consequence. So I will very briefly address on that. By way of just brief background and just for greater context, Alquist, on behalf of Quality Electric, is proposing to construct a 40,000 square foot building that will be part of the Pleasant Valley site. That's a joint effort by Alquist and Adler Industrial. This 40,000 square foot building includes office and a warehouse component. And the building itself would be utilized as the headquarters for Quality Electric, who is a local company and who has been doing business in Boise for over 45 years. They have a storied history. They have a very well thought of and established pattern and practice that integrates all of the best practices of industrial use, which has resulted in the industrial site plan that I'll bring up here briefly. As was stated, we originally brought forth a CUP application, which was approved for office that exceeded the threshold requirement under the code, and also brought forth a request for a variance. Now, let me pull this up. I want the record to reflect I created my own slides, which doesn't matter to anybody, but it's actually a big deal for me. The site is located at the intersection of Innovator and a north-south running public street. And it's proposed that this is all in accordance with the Ada County Highway District requirements. Now, access, and this is key, will be taken from both Innovator and the adjoining public street. So the primary building within the facility, as proposed, is located at the southwest corner of the parcel. Again, with parking along the frontage of the north-south public road and Innovator Road. The reason for that is, well, and I will say, what's updated since we received feedback and commentary and lots of good input from the city is that the north-south running street is not just road any longer, but now it's road, landscape, sidewalk, landscape, and then parking. A variance was requested due to the fact that as currently written, Boise Code Section 11-04064A requires, quote, each primary building and parking garage be located so that the surface parking lot is located closer to any abutting street than the facade of the building or parking garage fronting the street. With that, it would prohibit, it wouldn't allow for the parking as demonstrated now. Importantly, Innovator Road will be a critical future commercial collector and possibly probably a minor arterial. And so the design of this project takes care to ensure that adequate pedestrian landscape facilities are provided for the street section, as was alluded to by staff, and we appreciate that. That's not the problem. The issue here is that as a corner property, albeit a very large corner property, the Boise City Code has interpreted and as applied, imposes a design standard that absolutely makes no sense, and there's no functional ability for an industrial site to perform at this junction. Now, it's not just that it doesn't make sense from a subjective point of view, it's that the code section, there's a gap. This isn't office, it's not retail, it's not commercial on State Street. It's a industrial site that has two public street facing facades. And so because of that, the impact has the net effect of making the site not functional if it's applied strictly as the code is written. Now, this particular code section to this site, it's the literal equivalent of trying to take a square peg, an industrial site or user, and fit it into a round hole, meaning the code section. It just doesn't work. It doesn't fit. And we're not here to complain about the code. Just the opposite is true, but just to identify that there is a gap. There is a critical necessity for industrial users to have parking and circulation as configured as is up on the screen currently. There are three reasons. First, safety. We can't have cross-contamination of vehicular, pedestrian, and large delivery trucks. We have to separate and segregate those out. Safety is the primary concern. Second, functionality. Truck docks are needed for loading and for unloading. And in a site like this, as in most industrial sites, there is a way in which industrial buildings function. Again, it's not perhaps contemplated by the code. There's cross-docking, meaning you bring materials into one side and then they're shipped out from the other end of the building. So the building requires access on both sides, docking, so that materials can be brought in, processed, then distributed, and then sent out. The suggestions they're very well appreciated by staff in trying to provide alternative designs.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
could you ask staff is it possible to pull that up while the appellant talks about it?
Pull it up.
The alternative designs that Jesse had.
Madam Mayor, council members, this is the applicant's presentation currently.
Okay.
Are you asking to put on
He's
staff's
commenting.
presentation
Yeah, he's
instead?
commenting on it. So maybe we can just address it later.
Would you like me to continue? Okay. Let me actually address it this way instead. So we're speaking in the positive, not the negative, that this parking as demonstrated here on this exhibit, it was carefully planned. Again, tapping into 45 years of experience of how an industrial site needs to function, and also the critical need to provide safety. Safety is paramount. And it can't be said that the code was written in a way that would be a detriment to safety. That can't be the intended consequence. So here you have a carefully planned site that separates the truck traffic in the yard, which is located to the north and the east of the corporate headquarters building. And it ensures that there's not intermingling of vehicular and otherwise pedestrian traffic with loading trucks and large delivery trucks that are coming day in and day out multiple times a day. That's critical. And it also provides for the future expansion of the site. Now, again, if this were an office or a retail or a commercial use on State Street or downtown or in a suburban setting, I guarantee you we wouldn't be here talking today. We just wouldn't. But this is a unique site, and the desire to ensure pedestrian scale and access, it is desirable and it is provided for under that code section 110406-4A. But for an industrial use to separate employee parking and passenger vehicles from the circulation of trucks entering and exiting the site is crucial. The site can't exist without that separation. It doesn't satisfy the requirements of the city and the underlying foundation of the code to provide safety for pedestrians. Because time is short, I want to, and it was mentioned, and I want to address it during the commission's November 4th hearing. Now, I wasn't there. Mr. Jeff Wardle presented at that hearing. I have gone through, and this concern that I'm sharing, which is the basis for our request and our appeal for the variance that was denied, was acknowledged by the commissioners. This isn't a paraphrase, this is an actual quote, and I'd like to read it into the record. Commissioner Gillespie said, and I quote, "I'll simply say City Council needs to fix this because Alquist is correct that warehouse applications require certain configurations. Big trucks and very big trucks do create a unique set of issues. The city needs these types of facilities. It's, one of the pumps of our economy. So I do think City Council needs to figure this out because it seems to me that this particular variance is not, or the denial of this variance, which I think has to be done, isn't really in the public interest." End of quote. Commissioner Torres agreed when he said, quote, "I agree with everything Commissioner Gillespie has said. I think City Council needs to look at this." End of quote. I'll move on and try to wrap this up. I do appreciate that staff has provided attempts to design in such a manner that comply with the code, but doing so creates direct conflict between employee, patron, pedestrian movement with large vehicles that are coming in and out, delivery trucks that will be going in there all day. I want to conclude by bringing to all of our attention the appeal requirements. Idaho Supreme Court has determined that reversible error occurs in land use proceedings when the decision-making body fails to recognize that it does in fact have the authority to review and then act upon an application, but instead summarily denies the application based on its erroneous interpretation of the limits of its power. And that's from the Idaho Supreme Court case of Lane Ranch. Here, city staff and the commission took no exception to the request for CUP, but denied Alquist's request for a variance based on the fact that the overall site is a large undeveloped parcel, which means there simply cannot be any undue hardship, right? It's 10 acres. Just put it somewhere else. We would argue based off of 12 months of trying 7 ways till Sunday to make this work, that you could have a 20-acre lot. The fact that it's large is the parcel is large is irrelevant as a hardship arises from being on the corner. And that's what's unique. And that's what provides a substantive basis and a legitimate basis under the code and the law to grant a variance. I believe, although I'm not sure, there might be testimony today from other industrial developers. But for this site, the fact that it's on a corner provides a unique circumstance. And because of the characteristics of the site, going back to the Lane Ranch case, that those industrial sites that have an intersection on 2 streets, when the code strictly applied to this industrial site at this location, it provides an extreme, unsafe, and functionally untenable result. It's simply not encountered by other industrial uses. Notably, under this code, there have been very few industrial users that have been trying to fit this square peg in round hole. This is one of the first, and that's why I said in real terms, we're a trailblazer in this regard, sort of signaling what's to come if this isn't resolved. Now, in conclusion, the practical impact of the commission's decision produces a result that's just contrary to the interests of the user, a 45-year citizen and industrial tenant in this city, but it's also contrary to customers. In fact, the very intent of the city of Boise's new code altogether. The strict application of this code section, to summarize, one, negatively impacts the health and safety of those who visit the site, period. Two, it results in a standard where industrial users can't function. And three, it will serve as on a larger scale to set an unfair and an unreasonable precedent that really will have the effect of curtailing future industrial development in the very corridor that Boise is currently trying to promote for industrial growth. So recognizing that cannot be the intent of the city's new code provision, which again hasn't been tested in this particular situation, Alquist, on behalf of Quality Electric, respectfully moves that you grant the appeal of the commission's denial of the variance in this matter. And with that, I'll stand with questions, and also note that in order to provide the best information for the council, I have with me Brad Smith, who's our lead architect. I'm not an architect or an engineer. I'm an attorney, and so to the extent that his testimony might provide more specific information to your questions, then with your permission, I would also perhaps include him in providing answers. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Sure, thanks, Ton. And Brad's welcome to answer any questions that are directed at him as part of your Q&A time right now, if they come up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question. The parking isn't the only variance that was requested in the application. There's also a variance for office coverage. Is that right?
Well, the CUP was which was granted, that was to provide more office space that is typically allowed for under the code. Will go up to 55%. That part of the CUP was granted.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. And so in your argument, we have a very specific criteria to review when reviewing an appeal. So is the argument, I'm trying to connect what you have said to that approval criteria for turning over an appeal. Is this tied to the arbitrary and capricious? Is this violate state federal law?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, Commissioner Stead, Councilmember Stead. Yeah, the actual it's wrapped into one, but standing alone, each and every one of the following, we believe, and we have appealed we have argued are the justification for the grounds for the appeal. First, it's a violation of the constitutional state or city law, and that's based on the Lane Ranch case that I quoted, that if a governing body instead summarily denies an application based on its erroneous interpretation of the limits of its power. In other words, the commission had the opportunity and had the power to grant the appeal. And as you look back at the commission's exact language from there, I don't mean this in a disparaging way, they punted to the city council because they recognized, hey, there's a problem here. We can't do anything about it. Our hands are tied. And so they passed it to the city council. That's the grounds for an appeal in and of itself. And then secondly, the decision on its face is arbitrary, capricious, and an abuse of discretion for the same reasons, which then ties to the third reason under the standard that there was substantial evidence presented and it was denied and not really looked at. They just passed it to the city council.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, got a couple areas of, I think, confusion or at least some questioning. Can you pull up your design slide, or can we get back to his design slide? So one of the things that not ours is, if we can, One of the things that you're talking about is a hardship on it being a corner lot. And what I'm trying to figure out is that if it wasn't on a corner lot and it just had the one street facing thing, would you be able to pull this off with no issues? And can you explain to me how that would work? Because what I would see if that was the case is that you would still have parking in front of your building on either side of the street. So how would it be different if you didn't have a corner lot and you just had the road on one side?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, wonderful question. That's the nail that needs to be hit. So what I'd like to do, because it provides more substantive basis than as the attorney can provide. If this is an appropriate time, I'd like to bring up Brad Smith, because that
Brad,
is
yeah, if you could explain that to us, that would be great. Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is when you're looking at this, if we didn't have the West Road, for example, then we could put parking all along there on the left-hand side or the west side and trucks on the right-hand side. But basically in any industrial parcel, anything that's parallel to the road will be very difficult to build. If it were perpendicular, you wouldn't have this problem. But for us, you have both of them being parallel. So essentially, there's nowhere to park the parking and the building and then put the loading docks and trucks. And as Ton said, in almost every industrial, if you look all over the valley or really anywhere in the United States, you have parking on one side and truck wells on the other so that you can keep that pedestrian and trucks separated. So that's why right now, really, if we didn't have that West Road, Visionary Road, that public road, we could put parking there and it wouldn't be any variance because we'd have that there.
And then all the
makes
other
sense.
parking would be on the east and
On the
not on
east side.
the,
Correct,
I
yeah.
guess that's the south.
The south or vice versa. If
Or
we didn't
vice
have a
versa.
south road, then you just turn the building and put all the parking there and then it'd be on the east and it'd be able to do that. But since there's two roads there, there's really nowhere to park. And then the north boundary's the boundary.
Great. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
And then another question, unless someone else has one for Brad.
I do.
Yep. Let's keep
Ma-
them up here.
Madam Mayor, Jesse, would you mind pulling up your architectural renderings? Could you just speak to me plainly about why these don't work? I think it's somewhat clear, but can you just, for your purposes, why these don't work? No, absolutely. So yeah, the far right one, the concern would be if you have pedestrians on the far right-hand side and they're crossing the truck route there, so you have the loading docks on that side, you definitely don't want the pedestrians from a health, safety, welfare perspective crossing that. On the middle one, we've got the parking still on the roadside right there, right? So you'd still have it on the road. And then on the first one, we'd have the loading dock once again, where you're having trucks go up and around, and you have the pedestrian trucks and the cars crossing right there. So that's the concern. So, Madam Mayor, on the middle one, your concern is the top. On the middle one, your concern is the top left corner, which would be the northwest corner, where you have trucks coming out and cars coming out of the parking lot at the same place. That's the concern there. On the middle one, you said? Mm-hmm. Correct. You'd have trucks trapped on the right-hand side, and then you'd still have the parking up against the road on the middle one, just like we had proposed. So it's the same basic layout as we're showing.
Madam Mayor, I have one more question, Jimmy, before, sorry, Councilmember Halliburton. So, not every project is good for every parcel. So I guess, and this maybe isn't a question for you, but why does this project have to happen on this parcel if a different square parcel without two roads without two roads might be more appropriate?
Like to put it on a different parcel in the area?
Yeah. Like, why are we trying to make is this the lawyer question? Sorry. Why are we trying to make this work on this parcel if this parcel doesn't work for this project?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Steed, because that's the parcel they own. And under the code, if we got into, no pun intended, well, pun intended, part and parcel of the code application would be to look at, well, this parcel it works and this one doesn't, then what's the benefit of an industrial zone code? What we have here is, and we may or may not receive further testimony from other industrial users on this point, but what we have is a very fixable blind spot in the code that probably needs to be addressed on a wholesale basis. But while that's in the process, this particular applicant, because they're the ones going first and identifying, I mean, truly, it was with the great help of staff that all of us identified this for the first time going through the new code. And so for that reason, to have consistency, predictability, and feasibility for a landowner's ability to say, I have an industrial use on an industrial zone piece of property, there has to be a way to make that work.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, if I could follow up on a couple of those. Yeah. Well, no, it's the follow-up from the original questioning that we had moved over to Brad. No, we're good with Brad for now. No, Brad, you're good. Stay down.
Sorry, my mic's not on. Yeah,
So,
Ton.
so there's a couple other areas of confusion here for me. One, I think that the other variance you were asking was to not have sidewalk on that other street. Is that correct? Or we were having you have sidewalk on both street frontages?
No, yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, we have sidewalk, and maybe the confusion I caused is that on the north-south running road.
Madam Mayor, could we bring up the proposed layout as we describe it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Ton, so you're talking about Ton slides?
Tom slides, yeah.
Madam
Or
Mayor,
this is
Council
it.
members,
Because-
this is the same,
Yeah.
just slightly different wording.
And so we see the detached one on Innovator Road.
Yes,
And then is there an attached one on New Public Road? And were we asking for that to be detached as well?
I understand the question now, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. City did ask that on the new public road that there be detached. And so what's not reflected here, because we literally just, and I can confirm this by my own personal eyes, we just received it from our engineer today, but in response to the city's request, now new public road has road, landscaping, detached sidewalk, landscaping, then the parking.
Okay, so you're not asking for that in the variance in this point?
No.
Okay.
Correct.
And so my final question here, and I think this probably gets to the root of it. You're asking for a variance for a hardship on a corner lot. And I feel like you're asking for that because that's what's available in front of you. But the real hardship is that you're saying that our code doesn't make it possible for warehouses to build on these types of corner lots. The code's the hardship for this type of development, not necessarily the lot itself.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, yes.
Okay.
Madam Mayor? Yeah, thank you very much for putting this in front of us. As I take a look at the picture, I can think of a couple of different ideas that would allow for that separation between trucks and cars, such as an underground parking facility or a sky bridge or an underground bridge, which I've seen from parking lot into an entrance to the facility. And I bring that up because I think it's the orientation of how you want to use the property on this corner lot that's causing the hardship, and not necessarily the code causing the hardship to it. Because if you were to potentially move that warehouse into the center of the property, have the parking behind, and maybe your loading docks to the side, and on the other way, there'd be the separation and meet the code requirements. It's just, I think, kind of maximizing the potential for the warehouse and office and future expansion.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Corliss, to be very, very just frank, because I think it's a wonderful question, because that's been what we have been grappling with for months and months and months. The ideas of underground parking or sky bridge for this type of use in an industrial setting would be, and I probably stand to be corrected, but I think would be the first of its kind, maybe in the United States of America. I think that an underground parking lot for a 10-acre industrial user that's a warehouse facility, it's very industrial heavy. The sheer magnitude of that cost would make the entire project probably unfeasible. And so I think what we have done is we've tried to take the best practices and really, again, focusing on what's the safety requirement? What's going to make sure that we're not looking at, families in the face to say, yeah, we had pedestrians and patrons crossing the paths of large delivery trucks, and there was an accident. And so the way that it's developed is perhaps a sky bridge or underground parking is an option. The other option is a variance to the code that allows for the unique nature of this site to be accommodated for.
Madam Mayor. A couple questions. Mr. Peterson, I need a little bit of clarification. So I hear that you're saying that there's a blind spot in the code. It doesn't address when you have a corner lot in an industrial park, correct?
Correct.
Here's what I'm trying to follow with you, that that this commission erroneously limited its power. How do you believe that it limited its power if the code is silent on this, or if it doesn't address? Can you walk me through that?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willits, wonderful. I love that question, because as an attorney, that's what, how do you make this work? There is a provision in the code whereby, in fact, we've availed ourselves of that. There's a provision where you can request a variance. You can request a variance, and not having been there, but then having gone back and reviewed the entire transcript, it was clear to us that while there was discussion, there was an acknowledgement that the commission, couldn't act upon it. And so therefore they made the statements they did on the record and sent it to council. So I believe, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying, so I'm going to check for understanding, is if it's not in code, you have a variance, and the commission could have done that, and they didn't. And that's their mistake.
That's our argument, yes. And we believe that that's true. We believe there's substantial grounds that in this case a variance could be granted. That mechanism is provided for, and it simply wasn't
Utilized.
Right.
Couple other questions. In terms of the circulation, this makes a lot of sense to me. Like, if I am driving here and I'm going to work for this company, I want to park in front. I do not want to park where the big trucks are. When you talked about more streetscape, like, you're going to have I think what you called it was, you had road, sidewalk, landscape. Maybe there's more landscape in there.
Even better.
Okay.
We have road.
Okay.
Landscape, sidewalk, detached sidewalk, more landscaping, and then parking lot. And that was in direct response to the request that was made from us to us by the city.
And I'm assuming that's because this is going to have office space, and so you're going to have more people here, and people need to drive there. But we also want them to be able to walk and feel like they're safe as well. Okay.
Correct.
One other question in terms of, and I want to be delicate in how I ask this. Why'd you buy this parcel piece? First of all, I believe in private property rights, and y'all you take property when you can, and you buy property when you can. Did you foresee this as an issue ever in your history as an architect or anything like that? I mean, I'm just wondering, is this unique to our code, or is this unique to the parcel and the code? I just need some more. I need you to suss that out a little bit more.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willetts, it's the application of the new code with respect to this parcel. And more specifically, this situation is probably not encountered to the level of this severity by other industrial uses that maybe have more typical frontage along a single street. But it's encountered in this case, and the hardship is presented because of the unique characteristics of the site. And that's actually referenced in the new code itself. That's the irony, is that Boise City Code section 11-5-5.3L3A talks about that the site should be evaluated based on the characteristics of the site. And so to answer your question, and trying to do so as directly as I can, the implementation of the new code applied to this site makes an industrial site simply not function. Whereas the application of the code to an office or commercial or retail use in downtown Boise does. And so it's simply the application of a new code that has yet gone untested that provides the impediment to this site. Thus, the request for a variance.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Don, how soon do you plan on developing this property?
As soon, oh, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Nash, as soon as possible. And in fact, that's part of the presentation that that we probably didn't elaborate on as much as I should have. But on the exhibit that's in front of you to the north is another structure that has been reviewed and approved and is going forward with design review. But that structure is dependent upon the headquarters then being constructed so that it's one contiguous and harmonious site. So to answer your question, as soon as humanly possible.
Okay, so I think what I'm getting at here is when we passed the modern zoning code, in the motion, we said we're going to consider this some changes a year from its passage. I think when we put that in there, we expected meetings all the time over the course of last year with complaints such as this, that we missed something. We didn't get a lot of those. So we've kind of slow walked making those changes. And it just so happens that in the 13th month since its implementation, we have one of those complaints. So I think what I'm getting at is if council were to feel tonight that there is an oversight in the code and that they were inclined to defer this, to contemplate that oversight, how much leeway is the applicant willing to give us on that deferral?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Nash, and to be really clear, and I know it's just vernacular, no complaints from us on the code, just recognizing, again, it's a voluminous document and recognizing that there was an unintended blind spot is our position. So we certainly don't have any complaints. We only have gratitude that we're able to work through these types of things in this setting. That being said, we would certainly, and I know other industrial users, and I can attest to others would be very interested in addressing this very thing moving forward. That being said, that the reality is that we have an industrial user who's partway approved in that their structure to the north is approved, and yet we got held up on the south. And so it's hard to build one without the other. We would want to be cooperative, but we would still request the granting of our variance so that we could move forward.
Madam Mayor, Tom, I don't know if that's going to happen tonight. If it doesn't happen tonight, we only have 60 days without your consent to defer this. I don't know if we can make the changes you're asking for in 60 days. How much time is practical for us to consider a change to this?
Well, Councilmember Nash, I mean, you're asking a question. I don't want to put you on the hot spot and say, well, you have to perform on our behalf on 30 days or 45 days, right? I mean, you can imagine we would like to say, if we could get this resolved in a reasonable amount of time so that the tenant can move forward with the building, if that's 30, 45 days, but I don't want to pigeonhole myself or the council into, backing ourselves into a corner that's just not feasible or workable.
All right.
Madam Mayor, I've got a question for staff, and I think that this might help with some clarification.
Yeah, what I'm going to propose now, I'm going to ask, okay, a question for staff, and then there are some other people, maybe there aren't other people here to testify on this. No. Were you a party of record? Because I have a listing as no party of record. You're an owner. Okay. Yeah. Is he part of the applicant party? No.
It's Mr. Adler who's here as a
Right. No, I know who he is, but you said Adler at some point. So, unfortunately, unless you're part of this application and you're the applicant because you didn't testify, and you're not a party of record because this is an appeal. So this is what I am going to do. We're going to state. Well, I understand that, and I'd love your feedback, Mike. This is not the place for the feedback because we're in an appeals process where this council is acting in a quasi judicial fashion and it's a closed record. Go ahead. Question for Jesse.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I just want to make sure that we have a full understanding of what happened at the planning and zoning meeting. So I read through the transcripts. Let me say it out loud. And if you could confirm that that's what happened, that would be wonderful. If it's not, then please correct me. All of our planning and zoning commissioners took a look at this and they saw that it did not fit code. It did not fit our code requirements in the modern zoning code. And they did not feel comfortable approving that variance because it was very clear in code that it didn't fit. And I think there was agreement from all of the commissioners on that. However, there were two commissioners who I think saw that the problem is that there was a gap in code and that we were going to continue to see these problems on a regular basis. There was probably two that said, I still can't approve this, but city council needs to address what appears to be a large gap in code that we're going to continue to run into. Is that what we had from that commission?
Madam Mayor, councilors, yeah, that is correct. They did speak to addressing this at the council level. There are also commissioners that did think that this could be solved with alternative designs. So there was a discussion on both fronts.
Great. And so, Madam Mayor, I guess my question is for staff. And I guess this could be for potentially for legal as well. The hardship isn't the corner lot. The hardship is that there's code that doesn't match up with this kind of industrial use on this corner lot. And so we could say that that hardship itself was overlooked and we could grant a variance for that. And then we could go back and correct code. So you could grant a variance in that there was a hardship and the code did not allow this to be developed on this lot. And we could still go back and change code. So, because the concern was that if we set this precedent, that any other place on here will be allowed to do this, but we could actually go back and correct what could be the error in the code.
Madam Mayor, council members, on the screen right now are the variance findings. And at the commission hearing, they talked about how they could not make these findings because the hardship is written in a way that it's due to characteristics of the site. So that's why they, talked about how the code could be modified, but this is what they had in front of them. And then today, the standards of review for the appeals are on your screen now. And so this is what's before the council today.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thanks, Jesse. So this is the criteria that we're using to make our decision today. Just to clarify, I think, and I guess I know that the commission was reviewing whether it was a hardship or not. That's not, however, on our plate tonight. Our plate is this criteria as applied to what they found or didn't find. But can you answer for me? So from your perspective, and I know that industrial space is in low supply in our city and in high demand. So is this, from your perspective, I know we have other industrial projects that have gone through, is this lot unbuildable because of this loophole in the code, or do you see it as just not ideal for this design that they are proposing? And I guess what I'm asking is, like, could a different industrial use or could a different design, could any of those things perhaps apply to this parcel that is flat 10 acres square?
Madam Mayor, council members. So the warehouse use does have, as the commission acknowledged, as you heard tonight, some differences with passenger vehicles versus trucking. And so, certain designs make that conflict, potentially bigger. However, there are other uses that are allowed in industrial zones that are not warehouse uses that may be able to develop on a corner site that don't need some of these circulation and separation specific designs.
Great, thanks.
All right. Is anybody here to testify? No, it's closed record. I'm sorry, Mike. I keep teasing you. Because there's nobody here to testify on this that was a party of record, We will now go back to closing arguments by the applicant / appellant. I do want to make sure before that council has a chance to ask any questions of staff that you might have, so that the applicant / appellant is able to respond to them in his remarks.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
one question for Jesse. With the design that we have, would they be able to provide those loading docks that would be front road facing for if they were to switch those around?
Madam Mayor, council members, are you saying if they were to provide loading docks on the south side of the building?
That's correct.
Madam Mayor, council members, that would still not meet the code requirements because it would be, a parking and vehicle related use instead of a more pedestrian friendly design, and especially if you have the office spaces there, that's what was going to want to be featured in that corner, especially.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I've got a question for staff. I'm trying to figure
No,
out how to ask this question. To me, I can see that there's an issue with some of our code. What I don't want to do is I don't want to approve a variance, not knowing if the issues that come up will be solved in the future. What I would rather do would be to explore deferring so that we would have time to have that conversation. But what I'm wanting our staff to be able to have a conversation with some of these industrial developers to figure out if there's a better solution going forward. And I want to make sure that in a 60-day capacity, our staff would have the ability to have that conversation, and we wouldn't be making a motion to defer and then it not coming back. And so I'm struggling to make that motion and to be able to direct staff to something that I'm not sure if they have the bandwidth to be able to do in that short period of time.
Madam Mayor, council members, staff is currently working on some code edits to bring before council. I'm not sure of the exact date on that, but I know that we have been working on putting together mostly clarification edits at this point in time. And so I think that will be before council probably in the next few months.
Okay, thank you.
The process for amendments to the code is much more extensive
Yes.
than 60 days with changes such as this. The changes anticipated by staff right now are typos and small de minimis things versus the application and everything that would take place going to planning and zoning coming through, correct, Rob? Because it's an update to the modern zoning code. And I'll leave it at that. 60 days is not.
Yep.
With the process, the notice, the hearings, all of that before it comes to you. Before council tonight is an appeal of a variance request based on, as he's outlined, the lot that they have and the way the modern zoning code addresses that and its usability. And so council needs to deal with that. And then there would be opportunity, apart from a hearing, to collect more information on what needs to be changed in industrial specific zones to better allow or more easily allow the flow of traffic needed to facilitate industrial zones. Anything further for? All right, come on up.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for the input and discussion. I'll be brief in conclusion. I believe, and I might be overstepping, and I don't intend to, but it feels like in talking with city staff, with planning and zoning, even the discussion here with city council, that there is a need, and if nothing else, a desire to look at what could have been an unintended consequence or a blind spot in the code with respect to this section. And we appreciate the opportunity to look at that in the future. That's a separate issue. Here, I believe that we have demonstrated both in the written briefing and in the presentation tonight that there are grounds, excuse me, for the granting of our appeal that would allow for a variance for this specific user to be able to move forward with the desired development on the industrial site that's zoned industrial, that otherwise complies with and responds to the city staff's encouragement. We originally put this configuration on paper. The reason the site plan is where it is from an initial pre-application meetings to orient the building at the corner. It makes sense to orient the building at the corner. It's standard practice throughout the country for industrial building design to separate office and showroom areas from large truck loading areas. It goes to safety and functionality. While in some cases that can be done by moving the building up against the road, the majority of industrial uses across the country and here in Boise, it's safer and more efficient for auto traffic to be in the front of the building where the offices are and truck traffic to be in the back of the building where the loading docks are. And that's the request that had been made initially. In a joint venture that Alquist has with some of its industrial partners, there have been in this valley completed large distribution facilities for Frito-Lay, for an ice cream manufacturing facility for Black Market Gelato, and for a building design for smaller Boise-based businesses. None of those would have been approved if they needed to comply with this new zoning code section. It's just untenable, and it's been demonstrated today for the various legal standards that grounds existed at the commission level and now with city council to grant the appeal to allow for the variance. Madam Mayor, because this is such an important issue for our client and our company, and I appreciate everyone's time, I don't actually, and I apologize ahead of time, I don't know protocol for this, Madam Mayor, but we do have Vice President of Quality Electric, David Bradshaw here. And as our concluding statement, as part of our conclusion and summary, would it be appropriate to invite him to share?
Sure. Any member of your applicant team can present within the confines of the timer, plus any questions you might get at the end.
Wait. Okay, go.
All right. Madam Mayor, council members, my name's David Bradshaw. I'm the Vice President of Quality Electric. And some of the questions that I've been hearing, I just thought maybe I can help out with some of that. The site out there, one of the things on the site, there's a lot of land out there for development. That's where the city of Boise needs to go for industrial. We know that. And there's challenges we haven't even talked about here, and that's the rock out there. Building an underground parking garage in rock is already. But this site right here, it's 660 feet wide, and it slopes 12 feet from east to west. And that's the highest part of that ground right there. That's the best place to place the building. We're asking for a variance for setting this building back away from the sidewalk to create the parking. And that is definitely because of the amount of people that we have in here. Our business is definitely, as a contracting business, is pretty unique. We have drafters in-house. We've got a large group. And so we have a lot of office people that will be inside the building, and we need a lot of parking. And so that's why we have it that way. The building cannot be placed on Innovator because the fire department requires the fire access of 26 feet to be between Innovator and the building. So they're already requiring us to set the building back on Innovator as it is and not have any parking on the front there. Initially, we wanted parking all the way around. We have a warehouse with office space off of Irving. I don't know if you know where our place is at, but up there by the old Statesman. And you were asking about loading docks in the front. Our building currently has loading docks, and the way we thought the building out now, the loading docks are on the south side. They're in a parking lot, and it's very dangerous. We've had a lot of close calls, and it's just not a good way to put it. The yard will be a working yard, and it's not just truck traffic in there. We've got forklifts, backhoes. It's a big laydown area in there, and it needs to be clear of people. So that's, I think there's more difficulties with the property and not just the code. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm going to ask you to wrap because you didn't hear what she said time. Okay. Any questions?
Well, Madam Mayor, I do have a question.
Great.
It's not that much related to this application, but where was your original location? Because I feel like I remember driving by it when I was a little kid in Boise.
So the original location where Pier 1 was at,
Yep.
and we're now what is it, In-N-Out Burger. That was Freedly. They built the mall. We're the last ones to leave there, and we rented a space in the Kendall Center, and we added on, or bought the little property and added on directly across the street from where we're at now. We're in the old Western Power Sports building.
Yep.
There on Irving right now.
Well, congratulations on your growth. Thanks for being a great employer here in Boise.
Yeah, thank you. And it's actually 62 years. He had one of our old 45-year mugs. So, but it's 62 years. It's a Boise company. We have 500 employees, and we've got a lot there in the building. So, warehouse is made for manufacturing. Also, we prefab. That's the new phase of construction. We're on the leading edge in Boise for electrical contractors, and this is a very well thought out project.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just want to thank him very much for coming out and speaking and providing your insight and what you have going on going forward with the prefab work also. Appreciate that information.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the appeal of CVA 24-25.
Madam Mayor, can I get some clarification on the motion?
I'd like a second. I'd
Can I
like a
get
second.
clarification so I know whether I could second?
Madam Mayor, I move that we appeal CVA 24-25, appeal of Planning and Zoning Commission's denial of variance to deviate from general site and building design forms. We're approving their appeal.
So we're upholding the appeal?
No.
No.
This is saying yes to Quality Electric.
Thank you. Second.
Madam Mayor,
We have a motion, a second discussion.
there's a couple things here. We do have a pretty narrow way of how we can overturn a planning and zoning decision. If you read through the minutes, I wasn't at the meeting. What you saw was a couple of the motion makers begging for city council to figure something out. And what I think that they failed to do was they failed to find a path forward. I don't think that they actually looked at all the decisions on the table and really saw the hardship as this is on a corner lot. Well, that's not hardship. The hardship is that we have bad code for this type of development on corner lots. And that's the problem I think here that we really need to solve. Was tempted to defer this to a later date. I don't think that gives our staff enough time to actually look at this in the way that it needs to. And I don't think that it gives the industrial developers time to actually identify what some of those key things are. But something here does need to be fixed. And they're right. I mean, this would have gone through in our old zoning code. And this wasn't a problem that we were trying to fix. We were trying to get as much industrial development in this area of town as we possibly could, and we weren't necessarily seeing it. And then we created a new zoning code that's making it harder for these things that we had approved eagerly, like Black Rock Gelato. And we went and toured it and we loved the space, and they're building something very, very similar. I think we have a small oversight in our zoning code that needs to be fixed. I don't think that we need to prevent this application from going through, but I do want to make sure that we take the time to get that zoning code right. So while I am upholding the appeal, it shouldn't be open market to completely violate any sort of code that exists here. We see every single one of these applications on their own as individual applications, but we do need the industrial developers to have conversations with our staff. And I would instruct our staff to have those conversations with them to see what problems we're running into in dual side warehouse loading dockyards and industrial areas, because we will be seeing, I hope we see a lot more, and I hope we see a lot more in that particular area. And if we're still prioritizing safety, then we're doing everything that we need to do. I would mention that this motion does include the updated sidewalk plan, separated sidewalk plan, or detached sidewalk plan on both streets.
Madam Mayor, I was, yeah. I'd like to echo some of the comments that Councilmember Halliburton said. I think we have to look at this from the big picture. What is the detriment in letting this go forward? It just doesn't make sense for us to say no in so many ways. And I don't think that the applicant needs to suffer because our code doesn't address something succinctly. And I think that's been proven in this discussion. I don't think that P&Z adequately looked at safety in this. I mean, they offered a lot of other ideas, but the fact is, you're the experts. You're the ones who do this, and you're telling us that if you do other options, people will be unsafe. I believe you. I believe you. We have had precedents with the zoning code. We found hiccups. That's natural. And we've overturned them when P&Z has given a very strict interpretation. I think this is one of them. I cannot see a reason why we would make you wait, why we correct something that we created that didn't address this adequately. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Madam Mayor, I'm not going to be supporting the motion. I can't find error in the decision made by Planning and Zoning Commission. And although a couple of commissioners thought that there could be a clarification needed or some kind of I don't know, a change to the code. Others saw it as a design flaw. I see this as maybe not the right parcel for this design, and looks like I think other designs could work. If not, maybe not the right parcel for this project. We have in our process the opportunity for a variance to be granted, which I think is exactly what that was the right process to pursue in this, was to look for a variance, and the commission didn't find a reason for a variance. And I don't see an error in that decision, so I will not be supporting the motion.
Madam Mayor, if I could, I just want to thank staff for their work on this, both with the applicant and what you've done for us here. I'm surprised at the lack of growing pains that we've had over modern zoning code, and I think these types of things are to be expected. And just want to thank you for your work in adhering to a code. And not every situation has been contemplated. I mean, that's common in writing law. So just want to say thank you to staff for that, and thank you for the motion maker on this. I don't know of, I can't think of a strong, compelling reason for an industrial area for us to have to be strictly enforced this specific design standard. I've been to Frito-Lay toward the grand opening there. Love that facility. I don't see a reason for the strict adherence here, and so I think there's an opportunity to revisit this sometime in the near future. So thank you for the motion.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, I want to thank our Planning and Zoning Commission for their thoughtful deliberation and to their adherence to Boise's zoning code. And I think if we were looking at strict adherence, I would have to side with our commissioner that I don't find the reason to that the commission or planning had failed in their decision to deny the variance. I think they upheld everything that we have written in the zoning code. And I agree with fellow council member Halliburton that it's a zoning code that's failed. And that common sense, when we look at the higher picture of this, is that this is where we want industrial. This is where we want the growth. And we have a company and their partners here tonight to say, hey, we want to make this happen. So how do we do this? So I think the fault, I don't want to say a fault. I think it's growing pains with our new zoning code. And I can't find a fault in the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think they did their job well. But I will be supporting the motion this evening. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could just a point of clarification here. And I think that I appreciate you correcting it. The modern zoning code has not failed at all. There should be hiccups along the way. We should learn from new things that come in, and there's going to be times in the future where we still see changes that are needed as new technology comes in and things that adapt. One of the central parts of the motion to approve the zoning code was we knew we would need to review it. And we knew that we would need to be working with our community partners, our commercial developers, to understand what was going on with commercial, our residential, our multifamily, and our industrial. And we need to do that. And this highlights the need to do that and to find some of those shortcomings. And we had said that we were going to be doing that within a year. This is a reminder that we need to do that. So while I would say that this isn't a sign that our zoning code has failed, it's a reminder that we need to continually improve what we passed years ago or what we passed a year ago. And we knew that when we approved it, that it would never be perfect, but the goal was to always make it more perfect. And this is an opportunity for us to see some of the shortcomings in order to make it more perfect.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, I want to thank the applicant and all the information that you brought us. I think initially, as I reviewed the minutes from planning and zoning and looked at the documentation heading this meeting, I was a little skeptical that what was brought to us was the best possible option. Like that is the most desirable. But where is the, good or better, that comes before the best? And I'm still a little curious about how the current modern zoning code allows you to maybe create something good, and whether that's really not possible. But I do believe some of the feedback that I have received from constituents this past year has been industrial. I think that there is a lot more work we probably need to look at with modern zoning code in the industrial space. It's a lot different. It's a whole different area. We've had appeals come to us that were form-based issues, but commercial in a mixed-use area, it's just completely different, right? And so I think I'll support the motion to approve the appeal this evening. But I think that as we look at the modern zoning code and we look at what we can do, especially, I think we really do need to rely on some industrial expertise to help us, because I think that there are quite a few points in there that we need to clean up. And that's some of the planning and zoning commission, deliberations kind of show that as well. That's something that I hope we do.
All right, thank you. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Morales,
Yes.
Nah,
Yes.
Stead,
No.
Willard,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Thank you. We will have a good night, everybody that's here. We're going to move on to the final item tonight, CAR 24-12. Wait, nope, yes. Jesse Lyle is back. And then the applicant, Nicolette. Oh, I'm asking that we take a break. Okay, yes, we will take a break. We can all run to the bathroom till 8, and then we're starting. I'm going to walk through. We've got Jesse from the city presenting, and then Nicolette. Welcome back. For the applicant. Marissa Keith is not here. Betty, are you here for the neighborhood association? You are, sir. Great. All right. And then we've got a couple folks in the room. If I don't call, I think you've probably all signed up, but if you didn't, I don't call your name, just come on up and we'll hear from you. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Jesse?
Good evening again, Madam Mayor and council members. The item before you is CAR 2412 and SEB 2435. This is a request to rezone approximately 3.34 acres located at 2272 5 Mile Road from R1B-AIO to R1C-AIO. And there's also a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 2 common and 22 buildable lots. The subject property lies within the Airport Influence Area A, which allows new residential development without any density restrictions. However, it does require an navigation easement and sound mitigation. The subject property is designated suburban on the future land use map, as are the surrounding parcels. Surrounding parcels are zoned R1B to the north, east, and south, and R1A to the west. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to R1C to extend a public roadway and construct 22 single-family homes at a density of 6.6 units per acre, below the 12.4 units allowed by the zone. The requested R1C zoning is compatible with the comprehensive plan and appropriate for the location, as the property is along an arterial roadway and near commercial uses to the north. As outlined in your project report, all lots will meet the dimensional standards of the R1C zone. The proposed roadway will be approximately 800 feet long and will end in a temporary fire turnaround on the adjacent parcel to the east. This turnaround will be required to be placed in a temporary easement until the future public road extension to the east connects to the existing substreet. Public testimony at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing was heard with concerns about density, height, neighborhood compatibility, and traffic safety. The most common themes included neighbors feeling the proposed lot sizes were incompatible with the existing area and privacy concerns with the potential for 3-story homes. After some discussion over neighborhood concerns about the perceived consistency, the commission proposed a development agreement to ensure general compliance with the proposal as presented. The draft DA in your packet ties the development to the proposed plans, limits the development to 22 lots, limits the height to 2 stories or 35 feet, which is the height limit of the R1B zone rather than the 40 feet allowed by the R1C zone. And the DA also ensures the proposed public roadway is constructed. It should be noted that the staff did not originally propose a DA for a variety of reasons. While DAs were commonplace under the legacy zoning code, the modern zoning code has been revised as a more form-based code with zones that better align with citywide goals. Additionally, DAs are prescriptive and do not allow flexibility for future conditions as they do run with the land, and they can also limit input from other agencies. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jesse?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Good question. So, Jesse, I know that you said this is 6.6 units per acre as opposed to the permitted 12 units per acre. Does the city ever do anything to encourage developers to hit that higher density, or are they allowed to do any type of density up until that maximum permitted?
Madam Mayor, council members, so the city does encourage density, especially in specific areas like activity centers, along arterials, near a lot of services. For this particular parcel, there is a public roadway or proposed public roadway and some open space that does take up quite a lot of that land area. So the 22 lots proposed all meet the subdivision standards for the R1C zone. And there's not really a lot of room for additional density if the applicant is proposing single family lots.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. We will now hear from the applicant. Welcome.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, Nicolette Womack, Kimley Horn, address is 1100 West Idaho Street, 210 Boise, Idaho 83702. Thank you for your time tonight. So we're here for the Sunsmith Estates subdivision. Shown here is the applicant team. Chris Anderson, Teller Bard are available virtually as well. I myself, Nicolette Womack, planner with Kimley Horn, Teller's the engineer, and Chris is the property owner, just for clarity. So again, before you tonight is a rezone, now called a zoning map amendment, fun change, and a development agreement. So that rezone would rezone the property from R1B to R1C with perpetual conditions of approval. And the preliminary plat would ensure that the parcels are platted for individual sale. So shown here is just a quick timeline of how we got here today. So our process actually started back in March of last year. We had a neighborhood meeting in June of that year, and we showed 27 units on the plans at the time. When we submitted after the neighborhood meeting, we decided to reduce that number of lots down to 22 units. And then we had our P&Z hearing in October. At that time, it became clear people wanted more information to lock things in the way it was shown. So we worked through the development agreement. We submitted that back in November, and we're here tonight for council. So again, this is the parcel, which is off of 5 Mile Road, 3.34 acres. And again, 5 Mile is an arterial roadway. Just in case you don't know this part of town, I just want to cover where we are for a sec. You are on this site, 3-minute drive from Fred Meyer and Albertsons, 5 minutes from Peppermint Park, 6 minutes from Molina Park, Walmart, and Lowe's, 9 minutes to Costco and the Boise Town Square Mall, and 14 minutes to the Village at Meridian. It's also only a 17-minute drive to downtown Boise, which I think we all know, based off Friends in the Valley, that's a dream commute. Also, we are within a 6-minute drive of Maple Grove Elementary, 7 minutes to West Junior High, and 15 minutes to Boris Senior High. This is from the City of Boise's Activity Center Almanac. We know in the staff report that we are just barely outside of that half-mile radius, but we think this information is useful to give us an idea of what's going on in the immediate area. So in the immediate area, there's an existing vacancy of land. About 7% of that land is vacant, sorry. And then we have about 1,600 jobs in the immediate area. However, the housing units per acre is only 1.8 dwelling units per acre. I think underneath modern zoning code standards and previous zoning code standards, that is extremely low. The question then arises, why was this area developed at such a low density when it does have such good proximity to good services, schools, parks, and jobs? And you'll hear from the neighbors that a lot has changed in the area over time. It used to be kind of on the edge of town. It's now in the center of town. So shown here is the city limits, which does end on Victory Road. And I think many of us know that there's limited sewer capacity, which includes the sewer moratorium south of Victory Road. So there's limited opportunities for additional development at the moment. Also shown here is the future land use map. So just wanted to make sure it was clear that the comprehensive plan has allowed the R1C zoning type since it was adopted in 2011 and updated in 2021. Shown here is just some general principles for this area. It does encourage a mix of housing types, price ranges, housing types and densities, diverse land use patterns, reducing vehicle miles traveled through infill, and then also, again, mix of housing types, different sizes and units, and then ensuring that those roadways are punched through. Again, here, zoning map, we are requesting R1C. It's important to note that in the past, we could have probably made an R1B zone work with reduced lot sizes through a PUD. However, that option is not available in the modern zoning code. So in order for us to achieve additional density in the area, we do have to pursue a rezone. Again, property size, 3.34 acres, 22 buildable parcels, minimum lot size is 3,567 square feet, and that is the proposed density of 6.6 dwelling units per acre. The adjacent subdivision names are shown here. You can also see that those subdivisions were developed quite some time ago now. To the north, 1975, to the east, 1998, to the south, 1977, and then again across the street, 1971 and 1997. So when we develop a parcel, we look at all the existing opportunities and constraints, and we take those into account. And some of the ones that came to our mind was that the adjacent subdivisions all terminated in cul-de-sacs instead of perimeter stubs. I think many people would agree, you know, that's obvious in hindsight that it probably shouldn't have been done that way, but that's what we have now. On the other opportunity constraint is that Targhee Street is required to be extended. And although we're happy to provide that extension, that is requiring 1.1 acres of our site. The other item that we need to work through is maintaining that consistency with the adjacent buried subdivisions and parcels. And lastly, we have limited usable space available on the front end of our parcel because of the required access point and the distances required on 5 Mile. So just to dumb down a lot of the detailed standards. On the left, you'll see R1B, the existing standards. On the far right, you'll see R1C standards. And you can see that the required lot areas are substantially different. You can see that the density on the left is 4.8 dwelling units per acre in R1B, 12.4 in R1C, and then in the middle actually is our proposal. So we are striking the middle between the two at 6.6 units per acre. And you can see the setbacks are substantially similar. There was concerns that somehow we go to 3 stories, and we agreed with staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission to limit ourselves to 2 stories and 35 feet in height for consistency. There was a lot of questions at P&Z about what is at stake tonight. And so I just wanted to reiterate, although the R1B zone does allow a maximum of 16 dwelling units per the density standards, in order to meet the lot area requirements, you could only fit 10. So yes, in R1C, you could go up to 41. That's nowhere near where we're trying to go. But in the proposal, we are settling on 22. So again, at stake tonight is 10 units versus 22 units.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Could you let us know what is the lot size requirements on R1B? Do we have it
Yes.
right there?
That is the 9,000 square feet.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Promise we're wrapping up. So shown here is the conceptual elevations for the proposal, just to give everybody an idea of the look and feel of these parcels. So it will be single family detached. And shown here, just a quick overview of our neighborhood meeting. We appreciate all the feedback along the way. So we did receive feedback about density, heights, future permit requests to change this project further, and concerns about that, concerns about traffic safety. So along the way, we did remove 5 units and we did add detached sidewalk along 5 Mile. We did get at the staff report conditions. We're happy to do the airport navigation easement, the sound attenuation, the temporary access easement for fire turnaround, and work with ACHD on the roadway approval. We're also happy to add the class 2 and class 3 trees in the landscape buffer. Based off of the last public hearing and P&Z's recommendation, we did agree to adding the development agreement with conditions for conceptual plan. That will include max building height, max stories, and the number of parcels will be limited. With that, we'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Can we go back to the picture that shows the development? Just a quick question. So on the site there, I think as you come into the property, there's some green space that's to the south next to that French Villa Estates. What's planned in that area there?
Yeah, Mayor, council members, at this time, we're still working through amenities for the area. So right now it's open space.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, couple questions here. I think the lot was bare, so you didn't have to do any tree mitigation, or are there trees that are being removed in the process?
Mayor, council member, I believe there are limited trees with this, but that will be part of the review as well. So we'll make sure we comply with those standards.
And then my other question was, so I think you had originally said you had proposed 27 buildings on the lot. I'm curious what you had to do to get it down to 22. Did it mean bigger units and less of them? Did it mean they were shorter? Like what did you have to do to get it from 27 to 22?
Yeah, Mayor, council member. So these are the units. We can't do less vertically. So the only way to reduce units is to take lots out. And then shown here, what we did is that we consistently removed units to ensure that the lots are more similarly sized amongst each other. This ensures that builders kind of have standard setbacks and spaces when they're building, so they don't get tripped up when there's minor changes lot to lot.
Yeah, what I'm trying to understand is, did removing those houses get us extra green space, or did it get us bigger lots, or did it get us bigger houses?
Mayor, council member, so with the way this is configured, we can't utilize anything in that southwest-ish corner. We can't fit anything into that area that meets the lot size requirements. So when we reduce units, yes, we do get bigger lots.
and probably more expensive lots.
Mayor, council members, one can assume that is the truth. I don't know the prices.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
Nicolette, could you go back to the slide that compares R1B and R1C? Let's say this stayed R1B, but we limit, but the lot area is still big. Would that like force you to go up higher? We still have a height maximum of 35 feet, so I guess you couldn't go too high. But I mean, you could end up doing multifamily there in that situation. I'm just trying to understand. I understand there's some frustration from the public on density here, but it seems like even under R1B, you might be able to do more units at a higher level density. Is that not true?
Mayor, council members, so our proposal includes a rezone and a preliminary plat. So when we request to be rezoned, we're requesting to do that for single family. So if we're not able to obtain the rezone, then the preliminary plat goes away and the project essentially dies. This is a single family home builder. They're interested in building single family homes. So specific to this, I am not as detailed familiar with the multifamily requirements, but there is still a lot size requirements as well.
Madam Mayor, council members, if I could add, R1B does not really allow for multifamily development. It again has like a lower density allowance, and different product types allowed.
Understood. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
quick follow-up for staff. Under R1B, could each of those 16 units have an ADU?
Madam Mayor, council members, yeah, that is something that would be allowed.
Apologize. I just wanted to specify, Mayor and council members, that's allowed under any of the zones, correct?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now hear from the neighborhood association. Welcome. We haven't had a chance to meet, but I haven't seen you as part of the, I always like to say SWACA, but
Okay.
welcome. Thanks for being here.
Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, councilmen, and ladies.
Will you please talk into the mic?
Okay,
Perfect.
again, Madam Mayor, council ladies, council gentlemen, I am David Palumbo. I live at 11249 West Highlander Road in Boise, Idaho, 83709. In April, my wife and I will have lived at this home for 46 years. I am the secretary for the Southwest Ada County Alliance. The board of the Southwest Ada County Alliance Neighborhood Association has reviewed the following and approved it at our last meeting. The neighbors that surround this proposed project realize that something will be built here, but have several concerns with the project as it's proposed and oppose the rezoning from R1B to R1C. The density of the project does not align with the Boise's comprehensive plan NAC3 infill design principles. Section A says, encourage residential infill that complements the scale and characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood by applying the infill design principles contained in Chapter 3. The existing subdivisions are built to densities of approximately 2 units per acre, well below the existing zoning that would allow 4.8 units per acre. If the minimum lot size in the current R1B zone were utilized, it would result in a 240% increase in the as-built density in comparison to the existing surrounding subdivisions. The rezoning would allow the density to increase from 4.8 to 12.4 units per acre. The rezone to R1C would be at least a 500% increase in the density compared to the current subdivisions. The neighborhood will like to see this project align with the Boise Blueprint Principle IDP-N-1, which is to ensure infill and redevelopment within established neighborhoods is compatible with the height, scale, existing, and massing of adjacent homes and the overall character of the street frontage. The neighborhood does not feel that this project follows a predictable development pattern. Zoning is the assurance to property owners that when they buy in an area, they know the limits on their own development plans, as well as what developers can do around them. Keeping the existing zoning of R1B allows growth and an increase in density within what was expected from the neighborhood. If this rezone were to go through, the minimum lot size would be reduced from 9,000 square feet to 3,500 square feet with rear setbacks going from 20 to 15 feet and building heights increased from 35 to 40 feet. And I know it's been restricted to 35. The neighborhood association would like the developer to explore keeping some of the aspects of the R1B zone, including the 20 feet rear setbacks. And we thank them for the 35-foot height restriction. The neighborhood association would also like to see a variety of lot sizes and a mix of housing rather than a majority of the minimum 3,500 feet lots to create interest and add to the character and compatibility of the development to the neighborhood. This fulfills Boise Blueprint Goal NAC 7. In addition, the neighborhood association asks that all irrigation easements for both north and south are on the final plat and that the developer HOA be required to maintain any perimeter fence. Again, the neighborhood association and neighbors do not oppose to this land being developed, but would like to see a project that maintains or enhances the character of the neighborhood.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Could you repeat the second to last condition? I think it was related to water.
The neighborhood association asks that all irrigation easements for both north and south are on the final plat and that the developer HOA be required to maintain any perimeter fence.
And what's your understanding of the existing setback requirement? I think you asked for 20 feet there.
We're asking for 20 because that's what the
R1B.
The existing zoning is 20. We'd like to maintain that. The neighbors would like to maintain that, please.
Right, thank you.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I had
Oh,
a
yeah.
question. First of all, looking real sharp tonight, like your pins. We got a couple new ones today too. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Boise State? Is that what the top one is?
No, that's an angel.
Angel. Okay, gotcha. My
sort of like my
sight's not as
guardian
good as it used
angel
to be.
that helps me
That's
do this.
Jordan's angel. Same thing. So there was a question I asked the developer, and I guess I'd ask the same question of you. So if it stayed at a lower zoning level, what you're probably going to end up seeing are fewer houses, but larger houses, and also houses that are more expensive. And so there's a trade-off in that instead of getting smaller houses, you're getting larger ones and that are more expensive. And I'm wondering if the neighborhood has taken that into account as well.
I haven't had any discussion relating to that trade-off. It would mean that the homeowners would have larger lots with, say, the existing house plan that's there, which could provide for good things like gardens and recreation and the like. Yes.
Yep. So what I hear you saying is that you would prefer larger lot sizes, but for the houses to stay about the same, smaller size.
Yes, because that would fit in with the community a little better.
Gotcha. All right. Makes sense. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Actually, just to piggyback off of that, maybe just the question that I had asked earlier. If this did stay under current zoning, you did have larger lots, larger backyards, each of those 16 units could do gardens, could do other things. They could also do an ADU in the backyard. So an accessory dwelling unit, right? Under our new zoning. So that would be about 22 units. Is that still preferable to what is being brought here today?
Yes.
Madam Mayor. David, thanks so much for being out here tonight. I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming out and speaking on behalf of the neighborhood association. I know there's a couple of different things that you had mentioned as far as varying the lot sizes to be more interesting, and also talking about having the 20-foot rear setback, different lot widths. Is there something, if there was two questions. One, did SWACA have an opportunity to meet with the developer at the neighborhood meeting?
We had at our last board meeting, which was a Zoom meeting, one of the members of the neighbors was in that meeting. So we visited with him regarding this program.
Okay. And was someone from SWACA at the neighborhood meeting that the developer was required?
Not to my knowledge.
There was someone. Okay. just.
I'm sorry, we can't have questions answered from the audience. I'm going to ask that, sir.
Betty Bermasola was there for sure.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that the association had an opportunity to meet with the developer and voice some of these concerns as
I
well.
wasn't there, so I don't know, but Betty for sure was there.
I appreciate
and maybe
it.
one other.
Okay, so
try to
thank you.
keep that through the chair.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Peaceful evening.
We'll now take testimony from folks that have signed up. Shirley Velasquez. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shirley Velasquez and I live at 2250 South 5 Mile Road. Could you pull up the picture of where they're showing the plat, the overall picture that she had?
When you say she, who are you referring to?
Huh?
Who are you referring to?
Her.
The applicant? I don't know if we have access to that or not. It
had the colored picture. There you go. So see that piece of property on the other side right there? That's my house. So we own that last acre right there. And so if you notice right behind my fence, there's going to be a 35 or 40-foot house in my backyard. So intrusive and invasive, I have to tell you. I mean, we all knew that one day that land would be sold, but for the more appropriate house to be built there would be the single family dwellings that matches the neighborhood where all these other people live. And then the other problem is, I don't know if anybody is addressing the traffic issue for the people who are coming out on Hollandale onto South 5 Mile while someone would be coming out that new subdivision and they're both turning left. That's a very small area right there. There's not room for 3 or 4 cars to be sitting in the middle of that street trying to get on other side of 5 Mile going north or south. I mean, I don't know if that's been addressed. That's a recipe for disaster right there. So again, we all have issues with the style of homes that they're wanting to put in there. I mean, 35 feet, they're going to be looking right into my backyard, right into my back window. I mean, I don't think it's fair that you do that to us people that have lived there for over 23 years with the new zoning.
Madam Mayor, Shirley, could you? Would you mind standing for a question? Hi. Thank you. I know exactly where you live. You're in my district, and I'm right there with you. I have an acre home. I have development that's happening all around me. So when I say I understand what you're going through, I really, really do.
It's really.
But I want
I've
to,
got to wait. There, I need a question.
yeah. So Shirley, understanding that if we keep this at the R1B zone, where you're coming in there and where a house is going to be at, there's still going to be a house. There may not be as many, there'll be 6 less, but so I just want to make sure that we're understanding that, that you understand that even with, if we keep this at the R1B, we're still going to probably have a house where it would be today.
Like 3 feet behind my son.
The,
Like if they had larger lots.
that was a yes or no question. I'm going to ask for,
Right.
this isn't time for a conversation back and forth. There was a question about whether you understood that there would be houses there in an R1B zone.
I understand that.
All
I'm
right,
just
thank
saying
you.
that if they were larger lots and single family dwellings, so that they're not 40 feet.
I understand. Thank
skinny
you
houses.
very much. I'm going to call on the next person now. Don Taylor.
Yeah, my name's Don Taylor. I live at 2156 South Daring Place, Boise, Idaho. And if you could leave this map up, that would be great. So I live just in the middle of all that, all those housing, just to the north. Okay, the density that they're building to under the R1B, they're saying that they're doing 6.6 homes per acre. That's because they're counting all of the land that they're not building on to the left. The size of the homes and the size of the lots in their diagram, they said they're building them to the 3,500 square feet. That is the R1C minimum size lots. That's why they have that many homes, is because they're building to the 12.4 density, because they're adding in that other land that's to the left and saying, oh, that reduces our density. But all of their 22 homes are smashed together at the lowest or highest density possible. So what we're asking for is, higher density utilizing the current existing zoning. We have two per acre right now, go up to the 4.8 per acre, get the additional homes. We understand that we will support that and go forward with that, because that's what we contracted with the city, and the city contracted with us for the various zoning. You hold us to the codes, the permits, the requirements. We ask you to abide by what we agreed to when we bought the property and when the developer bought the property. They knew exactly what the requirements were. They knew exactly what their capabilities were, and they should be held to the same standard. But we understand higher density, allow them to do the higher density in the existing zoning. We also ask that the subdivision goes, a subdivision will go in. We ask that the subdivision, if it does go in, do perimeter fencing around that. We will ensure on the outside, as the current residents, that there is no dead space between the fencing they put up and what exists with the existing neighbors. We will, and that will just, because that will definitely needs to be done. And we support that. So we support development, support increased density within the zoning, which, as was stated before, is a 240% increase on visible density that's actually going to be allowed in current zoning. And let's see. So please stay with that existing zoning. It'd be greatly appreciated. And the entire subdivision, the 400 plus homes, would greatly appreciate the support of the city staying within their requirement that's been imposed on us for the last 50 years of R1B.
Thank you. Next up, we've got Kathy Sorger.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for having us tonight. I'm going to he used numbers. I'm going to use heart. I bought my house in 1987. It was a stretch for me because I was a first-year Boise School District teacher, and I was so excited to have my 3/4 of an acre. I love the big open feeling, and I have developed that to be my own. Lots of trees. There are trees that are going to be cut down in that plan. I don't know how many, but maybe 10. And so I've lived there since 1987. I finished my teaching at Washington Elementary, which is downtown, and they have small little lots, and they love their small little lots, and they love the way that community feels for them. And I respect that. I always loved driving home to my big lot because that's what I love. So I would ask that you consider keeping that the zoning that it has, because it will fit right in with what our feel is in that part of the city. I also was one of the very few people in my neighborhood that was glad to become incorporated into the city. That was not a very pleasant thing for a lot of people when we were incorporated, but I helped them see what being in the city would be for us. I can't say that I changed a lot of minds, but I did try and encourage them. So you have a very difficult decision to make. It affects a lot of people, and I appreciate you being here to listen to me tonight. Thank you.
What grade did you teach at Washington?
6th.
6th grade. My kids started kindergarten there, and then they moved to Longfellow, so they never had you.
Oh, I was
now they're working.
Yeah, I was going to
almost done
say
with college,
that
like
was
a long time
that was
ago.
5 years ago that I was at Washington.
Oh, okay.
And I would like to say also, I would ask that you ask for a fence around, because we have lots of different fences. Some of them are 45 years old because that's when our subdivision was built. So a perimeter fence is an ask as well.
Thank you. I don't have anybody else on the list, but there's a couple more of you here. Betty, were you planning on testifying? And sir, I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Would you like to testify as well? Okay.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, we don't do questions in a public hearing. You can ask people afterwards. Great, you're coming up. All right.
Good evening. Can you hear me? My name is Betty Berman Solo. I live at 1970 South Cananero Way in Boise. And I am part of the Southwest Ada County Alliance. And I come here with a certainty that this would start happening with the changes to the code. We are all from neighborhoods where our home is our most valuable asset. So it's natural that we want to protect that asset. I appreciate the open space at the entry to this proposal does propose, but it wasn't useful in that it still required, with a request of a R1C zoning, to place lots that were far smaller than the existing homes. And I'm pleased that the proposal shows the difference between having maybe 2 neighbors and having 5. In many cases, that's what you're proposing with infill. And I understood in reading the code that there were set guidelines to be sensitive to infill, so that there would be more than just residential to be considered compatible, that you would use what you had there in terms of building to the needs or the necessity of the existing neighborhood. And I think that, this is going to surface many times over in the Southwest. And I think that, the discussion of having transitional lots densities in infill is critical for the new code to go forward and be a believable exercise for people to come forward and state their concerns. You know, there's definitely going to be an increase in density, but it doesn't make sense to, you know, take a project that is this small. And I like the open space idea, but I personally would prefer to see fewer lots, nicer homes, which protects me as a homeowner if I'm any of that existing neighborhood. And they will sell. They will provide a home for somebody that's looking for something on the outskirts of Boise. I think that that opportunity is going to present itself. And I urge the city council to go in that direction when you're talking about infill.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Nobody else in here, right? One last chance. Okay. Anybody online? All right. Before I have the applicant provide final comments, going to see if there's any questions for staff.
For staff. And Mayor. Jesse, when we did the modern zoning code rewrite, was there any consideration at that time about changing the density of this area? I mean, we had a chance to do it as part of the code rewrite. Was there ever any discussion in your knowledge that this was on the table?
Madam Mayor, council members, I think I understand the question that you're asking, but just to clarify, on the future land use map, this area has been designated as suburban. This was prior to the modern zoning code, and in that suburban land use designation, even when in the legacy zoning code, the R1C was found to be an appropriate zone in this area. So with the adoption of the modern zoning code, yes, the R1C allowance for density units per acre did increase some. I can't remember exactly how much off the top of my head. However, the R1C would have been an appropriate zone in the suburban land use designation, even in the prior zoning code.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Jesse, can you show us where is the nearest R1C residential to this property?
Madam Mayor, council members, I could do that, but I have to pull up our GIS map. I don't have that readily available on my slides. Is that something you'd like to see?
It is if we can. That'd be great.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna work on that. And
Crystal
then
can work on that, and then you can take more questions while Crystal's working on it. Anything further for?
Madam Mayor, I'll ask a question. There was a mention of the irrigation easement. Can you speak to that a little bit? I'm unclear what the concern is there.
Absolutely, Madam Mayor, council members. So I believe that they were speaking to on the plans. There is an existing irrigation easement on the north side of the property. There were multiple plans broken out within the preliminary plat application, and the existence of that irrigation easement was shown on some of them, but not all of them. And I think that was just for clarity of trying to read the plans. However, it's, you know, the irrigation company would still have control and access over that. That's a requirement that they have as well as part of our subdivision process. So on the final plat, that would be shown.
Okay, so sorry, Madam Mayor, just to clarify, so that would be included in the approval criteria that easement remains with the irrigation district.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, council members, the irrigation company does provide comments and any conditions or recommendations that they have.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Jesse, what is the setback in R1C? The neighborhood association had asked for 20 foot setbacks consistent with R1B, but what is the setback in R1C?
Yeah, Madam Mayor and council members, the R1B has a 20-foot rear setback and the R1C has a 15-foot rear setback. I would add though that irrigation and utility easement that's on the north side is at least 15 feet. I believe it's closer to 20 or 25 already.
And Mayor, there's been some questions about a fence going around the outside. I feel like it would be very normal to have a fence going around the outside of a place like this, but I think it would be very strange to have two fences up against each other. I'm wondering how we typically deal with that, if that's a requirement with the subdivision or what's going on with this fence situation.
Madam Mayor, council members, the a perimeter fence is not required in our subdivision landscaping code. And like you said, having two fences right next to each other can create some issues with overgrown weeds, which, can potentially be a fire hazard. I believe the applicant has been speaking with neighbors to try to find a solution to that, and they might have more information.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I do have an answer for Councilmember Corliss's question earlier. The nearest R1C zoning is a half mile to the east and 0.6 mile to the west. Thank you.
Further questions? All right, we'll hear from the applicant now.
Mayor, council members, neighbors, thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate the discussion and look forward to addressing these items one by one. I'm trying to think of the right place I want to start. Can I get my pictures back? Thank you. I like visuals, so I hope y'all do too. Awesome. Thank you. First off, I did want to just correct some of the comments that were made. One comment was that this would be 6 units less, and I do want to just clarify that this would be 12 units less, and that's because should we be required to to comply with the R1B zoning standards, we have to provide 9,000 square foot lots, and those roads and the driveway spacing does limit our available area to do that, to create 9,000 square foot lots. So although a theoretical development not on this parcel could get up to 16 units, anything on this parcel is limited to 10. So again, if this were to be denied tonight, we would be looking at 12 less units, not 6. Again, one of the comments was about density and how it's calculated. It's always funny how different cities calculate density versus gross square footage versus the actual developable square footage of each parcel. City of Boise does the gross square footage. So that includes all the roadway improvements. So project to project, when you're talking about density, it always includes roadways. So that's just a standard. There was also a comment about how tonight you would be approving 12.4 units per acre. And we do want to clarify that with the development agreement, you would be approving 6.6 dwelling units per acre. That is because we are limited to a maximum of 22 units on the site in that development agreement. So that would create a lot more known expectations for anyone developing on this area, on this parcel. Just reviewing my notes real quick. There was a comment about changing varying lot sizes between different parcels on this project. As you can see on our project, we're limited with needing to stub the road to the east. So that puts the road at its shown size. It can't go any smaller right here, smack down the middle. So to have varied lot sizes on the north side or the south side or in between the lot sizes will create a lot of difficulty for the builders when they actually develop, trying to make sure that they follow the rules when things change parcel to parcel. Regarding perimeter fencing, we have not worked individually with each neighbors. We do want to clarify that just for honesty with everyone. But we are happy to provide perimeter fencing with the existing neighbors. We just want to ensure that there's some flexibility to make sure that we, again, have worked through that with each neighbor and we can work through the material requirements as well. Looking at this. So it was clarified earlier that with the decrease of lot counts, we are increasing the lot counts, which does inherently increase the cost of the housing when it's sold. We believe that is at the expense of future residents who are not in the room here tonight and who would like to live in Boise. We think that's something that should be considered. Also with that, it was pointed out that with larger lots, there would potentially be more ADUs. And I think that is safe to assume because with larger lots, you do have more room for a detached ADU. When you are limited to smaller lots, there is less room to actually make that space pencil. So I do think they are protected in a lot of ways with the existing layout. Regarding traffic, this has been reviewed by ACHD and complies with their standards, and they have reviewed the access point on 5 Mile and have specifically requested it be located in this area to ensure we are not too close to any of the driveways to the north, south, or across 5 Mile. This was the best solution. Regarding density, yes, the zoning code did change the density requirements. However, when the zoning code was changed, it removed the PUD, which allowed us to request reduced lot sizes. So our only course of action is to request rezones, and we would just argue that we'll see more rezone requests because there is no flexibility out of the 9,000 square foot lot area requirement of the zone. So although yes, the density is at 4.8, you will see projects less than that because of that change. Otherwise, we'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor, Nicolette, my question is about the setback. It seems like on the north side of the property, could you go to your, yeah, it seems like on the north side of the property that I assume there's an irrigation easement there, and that looks like I assume that's that thin line that's there. And so it seems like that's going to increase the setbacks along the north side. Could you talk about the south side and what setbacks you anticipate there? There was an ask from the neighborhood association that these be 20 feet and not 15.
Mayor, council members, we are requesting the 15-foot setbacks of the R1C zone on the rears, so the north and south property lines. So we believe there should be consistency amongst the north and south adjacent setbacks. And we do think that we are limited in the development potential of this lot. So another 5 foot, I think, would further decrease any buildable or open space. I guess probably not open space, any buildable square footage, including if ADUs were ever to be built in any of the zones.
Madam Mayor, I'm curious about the lot behind the 220. Is that owned by the same developer?
Mayor, council member, sorry, I'm blind even with glasses on. So to the east, that is not owned by the same developer.
That was better directional point. We're all
real numbers.
So, but I wanted to clarify, the road that would extend has been approved already. So no matter what happens to this property to the east, that road would occur.
Mayor, council members, the road in its configuration has been approved should the project be developed. Should this project be denied, I don't think anyone would be building a road without project approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of CAR 24-12 and SUB 24-35, a request for a rezone of approximately 3.34 acres located at 2272 South 5 Mile Road from R1B AIO residential suburban with an airport influence overlay to R1C AIO DA residential traditional with an airport influence overlay and a development agreement, and a preliminary plat for residential subdivision comprised of 2 common and 22 buildable lots. And I also would like to add a condition of approval that would require fencing where there is not already existing fencing along the north and south sides of the property to create a privacy barrier for those neighbors.
Madam Mayor, second.
Who's that? That was Jordan. Okay.
Madam Mayor, I first want to thank the neighbors for coming out to participate tonight at length for a very long day to still be here late with us. So I appreciate that very much. And I want to thank staff for all their work on this. Specifically to Jesse, you're our star tonight. Thank you. This is a unique parcel with the requirement of the road down the middle. I do think that it limits some of the development potential. But I think that the applicant has done a good job making this a successful infill project, and will offer great homes for current or future Boise residents. This does feel transitional to me because they are two-story single-family homes. We could be looking at, in many neighborhoods and the growth pains that we experience, we could be looking at a huge mass of multifamily apartments or of even a mass of townhomes or something like that. So this to me does feel transitional in that sense. And I do hope that I don't think privacy fences are reasonable. And so I look forward to that as an added condition for that sense of comfort for you all, that will be two-story single family homes in your backyard, and hopefully that those neighbors would be welcomed.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, I want to thank the neighbors for coming out as well. I was somewhat of a neighbor to yours for part of my childhood off of Victory and Cloverdale, so I'm familiar with large lots and in the area. I will say when the applicant presented their presentation, they highlighted some of the things that were in close proximity, and they left off that it's a 10-minute walk from the Ada Community Library at Victory, and that was my fun childhood spot, and there on the basement floor. When we look at current zoning, mentioned this tonight. I mean, we could be looking at a project that is 10 homes, perhaps, with 10 ADUs, similar. And it's not that far-fetched. In our development tracker, we have a property on Hollandale on the other side of 5 Mile that's adding an ADU. I think a lot of these neighborhoods will look to ADUs to help solve significant housing problems for family members. Most of these applications come through and they talk about providing housing for their kids that have grown up but don't have a house to move to, or it's aging parents transitioning into ADUs, their kids taking over the main home, those kinds of things. And so I think we are going to see a increased in maybe a gentler density than a project like tonight. But as was mentioned, these aren't townhomes. These are homes that are going to have windows on all 4 sides. That's really great. And they're going to be things that maybe someone that grew up here in Boise can afford. And I think that's really important. When I look at this project, it provides abundant housing. And if we had abundant housing in this country, we wouldn't have the economic struggles so many face due to housing costs. And I think it's a good project. I think it isn't as extreme, as maybe we would see, closer to an area that had a little bit more density. It's also a 10-minute bike ride from Maple Grove Elementary, which I also thought was really important looking at that. So this is a great neighborhood. I want to thank you for coming out. And I hope that, these, as was mentioned, these families aren't here tonight, but maybe they'll show up at your church, and your neighborhood meetings, those kinds of things, and that you'll gain a lot of really good neighbors out of this that you don't know that you'll gain right now.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, I want to thank the neighbors for coming out as well. I know it's tough to come out here and at night at 9 p.m. to sit with us and to go through this information. I do understand exactly what you're going through. I live in Southwest Boise. I love it. There's a lot of large lots, and but a lot of large lots are going underutilized, and because it is in transition. The whole Southwest Boise is kind of a transition. And while I know that the lot sizes are smaller than what are in the nearby neighborhoods, what is really neat and what Jordan highlighted is that they are single family homes. And they really do fit that area of single family homes. And they also fit with what I heard from constituents is that they want a single family home on a smaller lot. And this will be able to provide hopefully something affordable instead of a bank of apartments or more townhomes, which we need also. We need a variety in the area. So because of that, and because we were able to limit the height on this also, I thought was a great concession from the developer, place some fencing on there as Meredith provided in the conditions. I will be supporting this evening.
Madam Mayor, I don't know that I have anything that's too different to add. I do think that when people show up to a meeting, there's a responsibility to share why we made a decision the way that we did. And I look at this and I see a developer that already went down in scale and some with your feedback. And so that feedback was helpful. And I see a site where if we would have reduced the amount of housing even further on it, the result would have been more expensive housing in this area. And I think about what the need is in our community. I think about teachers who are looking for work. I think about people who are working in the nonprofit sector. I think about some of our city staff. And I think that we need to make sure that we're providing a housing type that doesn't exist and it's more affordable housing. This is a diverse type of housing in this neighborhood, which our Blueprint Boise also calls for. But it's providing housing that would be more affordable than if we made it smaller. And that's something that we desperately need here in Boise for our residents. Councilmember Morales, said it better than I could. You're getting some good neighbors. One of the things that's been fun since I've been on council is I've been able to go to some of the places on projects that we've approved. And it's pretty fun to see kids riding around on their bicycles in places where they weren't before, and neighborhoods come alive that were slow. So change is definitely hard, but I think that there is good that comes with this. I think that, loss is really the hardest part, but I think that there's benefits that come here that outweigh what that loss is. I do appreciate how hard that change is and that many of you have been here for a really long period of time. And I do appreciate you coming out here tonight.
Madam Mayor, just a couple of things. First of all, thanks for coming out. It's been a long day and you've sat through a lot of other presentations, and I just appreciate that you care so much about where you live, that you would do that you would come. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this for a number of different reasons. It's very evident to me that the council is going to pass this, but I'm going to vote no, and here's why. We had an opportunity to make this higher density when we did the zoning code, and we didn't. And I think we need to own that. I mean, I love that it's single family homes. I mean, there's so many great things about this, but I can really see the neighbor's point about keeping the density that you thought you were going to have in a new ordinance. And I can appreciate that. So I'll be voting no.
All right, clerk.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willett,
No.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Well, before we do that, I was just going to say thank you for being here, for joining us tonight. It was good to see you all. And with that, I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.